Chapter 750. Buzz. Even the space and atmosphere were shaking. The light beam composed of magic was like lightning, like a laser. It flashed through the space, just like a storm falling from the sky. Raindrops fell in the direction of the apartment. Bang, 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 bang. Just like missiles were launched one after another into the fragile apartment. The wall of the apartment that originally had a big hole was directly bombarded by the raindrops of the magic light beam, causing a series of big explosions. Boom! The seemingly solid wall burst under the violent bombardment of the magic light beam. The entire wall of the apartment that originally had a big hole was destroyed by the bombardment of the magic light beam, bursting out a cluster of gravel, scattering in all directions. Whoosh! The wind was blowing, smoke and dust were everywhere. The thick smoke and the hot fire covered the corner of the apartment, and the direction of the destroyed wall was covered. Clang! However, in the next moment, a light shield that seemed to be composed of 7 petals, and seemed to be composed of pink light flashed from the smoke and fire that filled the air. Inside, Archer held out his hand as if he was holding the petal-like light shield, stared at Castor in the sky, and slowly said the name of the light shield. 7 rings of blazing heaven, Law Ajax. 7 rings of burning heaven, Law Ajax. In Greek mythology, the famous hero of the Trojan War, Ajax, was a noble phantasm named after Ajax. That was the shield used by Ajax. As a concept weapon that was proud of its absolute defense against throwing weapons, it was an expanded sublimation. It was regarded as a boundary relic that had an invincible defense against throwing weapons. Each petal represented a layer of defense. Each layer of defense was equivalent to a city wall. Archer used all his own magic to copy and project this noble phantasm. Behind him, Rin Inosaka was completely enraged by Castor. He was holding a gem tightly. Not only did you provoke me, but you also picked me as the first one to attack. Do you really think I won't get angry? In the angry voice, the gem in Rin Inben's hand burst open and turned into a red light. Like a meteor, it bypassed Archer's light shield and quickly shot in the direction of Castor. However, before that, a magic circle suddenly appeared in front of Castor like a shield, facing the red light that was coming toward him. Bang! The surface of the magic circle that turned into a shield ignited a burst of fire, but it couldn't touch Castor, which made Castor laugh. Using the gem as a trigger medium. That means you can transfer your magical power to the gem and write the magic formula. When you use the gem, you only need to trigger the magic that has already been prepared in the gem, and you can directly use it. You can even compress the chanting to the limit of magic, right? Interesting magic, isn't it, little girl? It's an honor to be able to enter the eyes of Castor. Rin Inben smiled. Undoubtedly, it won't work. I wasted a precious gem. Really, I don't know any gem merchants. As long as you are a magician, you won't be able to win against Castor in a magic battle, Archer said without turning his head to look at Rin Inben. So Rin, don't make a move. That's an accurate judgment, Archer. Castor sneered. As long as you are a magician, you can't win against me in a magic battle. As soon as these words were spoken, a faint voice resounded. Is that so? Why don't you try my magic? When that voice sounded, the whole space flashed with a dazzling light. It was a burst of light from a beam of light. A huge magic beam with a diameter of more than 2 meters suddenly rose from the ground. The friction became hot in the air, and in the chaotic twisting sound of the air, pierced through the space, and shot in the direction of Castor. Castor's face suddenly changed. Suddenly, an ancient staff appeared in his hand, and he held it in front of him. On the tip of the staff, a huge defensive magic circle suddenly popped up, protecting Castor. The massive beam of mana struck the defensive magic array. Dong! In the midst of a thunderous roar, the violent shockwaves and flames exploded in midair like fireworks, instantly illuminating the gloomy sky that was filled with purple mist. Bang! Under the bombardment of the huge magic beam, the defensive magic circle that appeared from the void burst open, exposing Castor to the terrifying light beam. Ah! Under Castor's scream, the beam of light directly fell on her body. Bang! A thunderous boom rang out once again. Looking at the entire sky filled with flames, Noah, who was hugging Tanjing tightly and kneeling on the ground with one knee, turned his head and looked in another direction with a magical formation composed of precise geometric patterns in front of him. At the same time, everyone present also looked in that direction. There, smoke was coming out from his body. The robe on his body was tattered, blood was oozing from the corner of his mouth, and he was clutching his chest. Castor was coughing violently, and he couldn't believe what he just saw. Is that a magic bullet? Impossible. Should they really say that Castor's servant? Judging from the unimaginably powerful magical light beam, no one would have imagined that it was a simple, basic magic trick that only processed magical power and shot it out, right? But Castor recognized it at a glance. It was because he recognized it that Castor was so shocked. Is that the magic you used to deal with Berserker? Impossible. Nothing is impossible. Noah looked straight at Castor and laughed at himself. Although it's just a magic spell that is launched after processing mana, it's precisely because of its simple nature that if the user's mana is beyond imagination, the power of the magic bullet will naturally increase accordingly. Unfortunately, I don't have much, but I have a lot of mana. That's why this magic spell became like this in my hands. It's not appropriate to call it magic bullet, right? Noah slowly raised the corner of his mouth. It's better to call it magic cannon. This name should be more appropriate for me. This time, it was Castor's turn to be irritated by Noah's attitude. You're a smart guy. In the shouting, Castor fiercely stretched out his hand. Attack. The surrounding Dragon Fang soldiers suddenly trembled. They suddenly raised their weapons and rushed toward Noah from all directions. It's a pity that Castor forgot. Here, in addition to Noah, Rinanaka, and Archer, there was another one with the strongest strength. Don't even think about it. Along with this cold voice, a ray of sword light suddenly flashed through the air like a crescent moon. It expanded and swept past the Dragonfang soldiers that were charging over from the surroundings. Bang! The Dragonfang soldiers that were slashed by the crescent-like sword light were immediately broken into pieces. They all shattered like glass, scattering into bones that filled the sky and dissipated into thin air. All of them were caused by Saber, who was standing in front of Noah. So, what are you going to do? Noah sneered. In the face of the strongest swordsman, the fully developed archer, the magician you look down on, and the most basic magic, can you still be as confident as before? Castor's servant? Castor's face finally became extremely ugly. Chapter 751. Because the Castor class is known as the weakest class in the game, it is also disadvantageous to the other servants. Therefore, the Castor's servant is generally unlikely to face the other servants head-on. They are bound to consider other ways to win. And the strategy was obviously a key part. Castor didn't suddenly attack without thinking about anything. In order not to arouse Noah's vigilance, Castor deliberately chose to attack during the daytime, and he tried to hide his aura, trying to kill Tong Yingyura first. In Castor's plan, the most ideal result was naturally to deprive Tong Yingyura of her command, so that he could control Saber and make Saber his own combat power. With Saber's servant, plus the strongest magician who could use a variety of magic to support him, as Castor's servant, even if it was the most difficult to deal with Berserker, Castor was confident. When Castor found out that Ryder was not with Noah, Castor was even more confident. Unfortunately, this plan failed from the very beginning. In addition to Rinanaka, Noah had the ability to sense things, Saber had the intuition skill, and Archer had the mind's eye skill. Even if Castor tried to hide his aura and chose to attack during the daytime, he was still discovered in the first place, leading to the failure of the plan. Of course, Castor didn't know that this plan had no possibility of success from the beginning. The reason was that Noah's scabbard was still hidden in Tong Yingyura's body, and because Noah had just added enough magical power to it, it could once again perform the duty of protection. Therefore, even if Castor was not discovered, when he attacked Tong Yingyura, the scabbard's protection would appear, and it was impossible to succeed. After the plan failed, Castor tried to pull Noah to his side, which also proved that Castor didn't come here without thinking about anything. However, Castor, who had always been thoughtful, was completely angered by Archer's call of witch. That led to Castor's current situation. Understanding this, Castor could only grit his teeth, but he didn't regret it. After all, for Castor, the title of witch was a taboo. Castor had already decided that those who called her a witch should be punished accordingly. However, Castor really didn't expect that the strength of these people was beyond his imagination. Saber's strength was much stronger than the previous servant who was Saber. Since Archer was able to engage in close combat, and had a high-level defensive relic, he was not limited to long-range attacks. Noah was even more ridiculous. The most basic and simple magic bullet had been upgraded to a whole new level in his body. Not only did it become a complete magic cannon, he even had the strength to go head-to-head with Saber and Berserker. It could be said that he was breaking the rules. Only Rin Inaka was not a threat to Castor, but it was not that there was nothing to be proud of. At least, she could protect herself. A Saber with superior strength. An archer with no shortcomings. An excellent magician. There was also Master, whose strength was completely unknown. He was unfathomable and had astonishing abilities. No matter how he looked at it, Castor didn't seem to have a chance to win. In addition, although Ryder was not by Noah's side, Noah could summon Ryder back at any time. The situation became extremely unfavorable for Castor. In such a case, Castor could only hide his resentment toward Archer in the bottom of his heart, and straighten his body that was full of wounds. Whoosh! A burst of magical power surged up around Castor's body, and Castor's injuries seemed to be smoking, and he recovered at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. Servant was originally just a spirit, and even her body was maintained in the real world with magical power. Therefore, as long as there was enough magical power, it was not impossible to use magical power to speed up the healing of injuries. What's more, with Castor's magical skills, there were many magical skills that could speed up the recovery of injuries. With the two superimposed, the seemingly amazing injury was completely healed in just a short time. If it was not a fatal injury, Castor believed that he could find a way to survive, right? The eyes hidden under the hood swept over Noah, Rin Enbin, Saber, and Archer, and Castor suddenly smiled. I admit it, today, there is no way to do anything to you. Hearing that, Rin Enbin was the first to react. What? Do you want to escape? Retreat is also a part of the tactic. Even if you are a heroic spirit, there is nothing to be ashamed of if you choose to retreat, right? Castor smiled coldly. But next time it won't be so easy. After that, Castor did not give Rin Enbin a chance to refute. He looked directly at Noah. Think about my proposal, Ryder's master. I welcome you to come to my side at any time and share the Holy Grail with me. After leaving this sentence, Castor's robe covered his body. In the next moment, Castor disappeared without a trace. The surrounding purple fog also slowly dissipated. One by one, the Dragon Fang soldiers went into the mist and disappeared on the spot. The sky was restored to the light again. Obviously, the enchantment had been lifted. Seeing this scene, Rin Enbin quickly said, "Chase him. Don't let Castor escape." Archer. Without making any answer, Archer directly entered the state of spirit form in the mist, and his aura gradually disappeared. Saber seemed to want to chase after him, but she was stopped by Noah. Don't chase him. Looking at the direction where Castor disappeared, Noah said, that servant's magic has reached the level of teleportation. Although there is a trace left, it is almost impossible to catch up with Castor. Saber's figure stagnated and she frowned. But Archer has already caught up. That guy also knows that he can't catch up with Castor. The reason why he chased him is to track his aura and find out where Castor's base is. Noah shook his head. So let's leave Castor to Archer. What you need to do is to protect your master. After saying such a sentence, Noah handed the sleeping Matsushita Sakura to Saber. Saber silently took Matsushita Sakura, and it seemed that she also listened to Noah's words. In this regard, Noah just smiled, turned his head, and looked at the direction of his apartment. Damn it! What the hell? That Castor. Inside the destroyed wall, Rin Enbin was still in Matsushita Sakura's room, yelling very angrily. Running out without permission, and then running away without permission. Why is every servant like this? If you want to fight, then fight properly. Hearing Rin Enbin's words, Noah also smiled bitterly. Having said that, the servants that Noah met before, Lancer, Berserker, and Castor were the same as what Rin Enbin said. They all ran out without permission. Although there were many conflicts, other than the serious saber, none of the other servants had the intention to fight it out at this point in time. After all, this war has just begun. Now it was just a test. It's getting more and more troublesome. Chapter 752. Although Castor had deployed a barrier after the start of the battle, so that the people outside couldn't notice the battle in the apartment. But before the battle started, in order to attack Tong Ying, Castor also rushed in with saber, which caused a big hole in the apartment. Because it was daytime, such an explosion was impossible to not attract the attention of the surrounding people. So, when the enchantment was lifted and Castor retreated, Noah and the others heard the noise coming from the outside. They believed that if this continues, it was only a matter of time before the surrounding people found out about the destruction of the apartment. Looking up at the scene of the destroyed wall behind the apartment, Noah covered his face and sighed. What should we do? Report it to the church. Rin Isaka, who came down from the apartment, directly answered. Because it was a problem caused during the Holy Grail War, the church will deal with it. That's good. Noah suddenly felt happy. I thought I would have to pay for it this time. What's wrong? Rin Isaka said with a smile. Don't you know a jewelry merchant and sell jewelry? You must have a lot of money, right? I do have a little bit of savings. Noah curled his lips. But that doesn't mean I will be a fool. After experiencing several worlds, Noah also made a lot of money in other worlds because of various reasons and ways. And every time when he left that world, he would exchange all the money for gold, gems, and the like. That way, he could solve the money problem in other worlds. Therefore, although compared to the jewelry merchant and other rich people in Rin Isaka's words, compared to the ordinary people, Noah was rich. And Noah's words, I do have a little bit of savings, made Rin Isaka's expression more obvious, and there was a trace of envy and resentment in her tone that was difficult to detect. I hate rich people the most. Rin Dosaka's words were so resolute that Noah didn't know what to say. At this time Noah remembered. Last time, when Noah went to Rin Isaka's house, because only Rin Isaka lived in the luxurious mansion, he said really rich people, and as a result he attracted Rin Isaka's resentful eyes. After that, after Archer's revelation, Noah understood how important money was for Rin Isaka, who was good at gem magic. Because, although it was a magic that even Castor thought was very interesting, and it was also a very famous magic in this era, but the extravagance caused by this magic was exaggerated. After all, gem magic required a gem as a trigger medium, but the use of a gem was a one-time use. That was to say, when Rin Isaka used a gem, the gem would disappear because of the magic to cast to use it. In this way, every time Rin Isaka he would lose a lot of money. Because of this, Rin Osaka was always in a tight financial situation due to the demand for gemstones, the cost of purchasing them, and so on. She was especially sensitive to money. Therefore, when Rin Isaka met Fujita, the jeweler, her eyes shined. One could imagine how much resentment Noah's words had incurred from this girl, who was particularly sensitive to money. Anyway, before the church fixes this place, I don't think I can continue to live here. Noah changed the topic and said with some annoyance, It seems that I have to rent a new place. Hearing this, Rin Enbin's ears suddenly twitched. Immediately after, the fake smile on his face brightened up, and he smiled brilliantly. Ah, Mr. Noah, are you looking for a place to live? Seeing Rin Isaka's change of expression and bright smile, Noah almost subconsciously became vigilant. Is there a problem? Of course, no problem. Rin Isaka, with a beautiful and elegant smile, began to approach Noah with unusual enthusiasm. Actually, I have a good place to introduce to you. Hearing this, Noah immediately understood Rin Isaka's plan. As he backed away from Rin Isaka, the corner of his mouth twitched. The good place you're talking about, don't tell me it's... Rin Isaka smiled sweetly. That smile was like a devil who hid his malice, and made others lose their vigilance while slowly inducing them to fall into depravity. Then Rin Osaka said, That's right. Didn't you say my place is good? At this point there was no need to explain. This Rin Isaka was definitely trying to take advantage of Noah. Noah was speechless. Are you sure it's okay for an outsider like me to live in the Isaka family's headquarters? It's just that our partnership is still ongoing. During this period, I can still spare a room. Rin Inaka said in a sales tone. Her face was right in front of Noah, and her beautiful eyes were curved into crescents because of her happiness. Anyway, you're just looking for a temporary place to live. Plus, we're partners. If we live together, don't you think it'll be more convenient? That way, they would be able to stay together for a longer period of time, which would prevent them from being picked off one by the enemy. If there were any urgent matters, they could also inform each other in the shortest amount of time. This would also make it very convenient for them to act together. That was what Rin Isaka said. Looking at Rin Isaka's smiling face, Noah became more and more speechless. In the end he sighed. If that's your plan, fine, just give me 2, no, 3 rooms. 3 rooms. Rin Enbin paused for a moment, then seemed to understand Noah's plan. He glanced at Saber, who was hugging Tosakura tightly and remaining silent. Needless to say, it was obvious who the other 2 rooms were for. There's no need for 2 rooms, Saber said. I'll share a room with Sakura. Really? Noah was puzzled. But you can't spiritualize, right? Yes. Saber couldn't spiritualize. Servants who weren't Saber couldn't spiritualize. Among all the servants, only Artoria, the King of Knights of Great Britain, was unable to spiritualize. According to Saber herself, it was related to her life experience. So Noah didn't ask much. But Saber couldn't spiritualize. It doesn't matter if I can't spiritualize. Saber tightened her grip on the Tsingtao cherry in her arms. Her gem-like eyes were filled with a strong will. I just want to stay by Sakura's side. Saber glanced at Rin Inaka and signaled for him to look away. Obviously, Saber was wary of Rin Isaka. After all, Rin Isaka intended to take away Tong Ying's command seal. Noah pretended not to see it. Then Isaka, you can rent me 2 rooms. I say, do you really plan to keep Sakura with you? Rin Enbin finally frowned, his gaze complicated. She's our enemy. She's our enemy. I don't have any grudges against her. On the contrary, we have a good relationship. Noah crossed his arms and looked at Rin Isaka. So, while she's still in a coma, let me take care of her until she wakes up. Then we can decide how to deal with this. Is that so? Rin Isaka asked aggressively. Is it appropriate for you to not deal with her when she's easy to deal with? It doesn't matter if it's appropriate or not. The most important thing is whether I'm comfortable or not. Noah said to Rin Isaka with a smile. Or do you want to throw the unconscious Xiaoing on the streets? You win. Rin Isaka clicked his tongue and looked at Saber. Do you think that's okay? Accepting the enemy's charity? Why not? Saber answered without hesitation. If it's good for us, why should we accept the enemy's concession? Seeing Noah and Saber showing generosity, Rin Isaka was annoyed that he couldn't be so free and easy. What the hell? Chapter 753. Afterwards, Rin and Osaka notified the church and asked the church's supervisor to suppress the situation of the apartment. He also promised that the apartment would be repaired. Only then did the commotion calm down. Because Mamoru Sakura still hadn't woken up, Noah and the others didn't stay outside any longer. Instead, under Rin's invitation, they went straight to the Nagasaka family's mansion. Originally, both Rin Enbin and Tama Tanjing had to go to school. Today was not a holiday. However, Tama Tanjing was still unconscious, so she could not go to school. However, Rin Enbin's words were clear. Now Rin Enbin could only bring Noah and the rest to his house. After designating 2 empty rooms for Noah and Tama Tanjing, he took his backpack and went to school. He was probably going to help Tama Tanjing apply for leave. To be honest, Noah was the most speechless at Rin Enbin's actions. The purpose of a magician's existence was to find a way to reach the origin, not to fight. Therefore, instead of saying that a magician was a warrior, it was better to say that a magician was a scholar, a researcher. Under such circumstances, the magician had to have a special place similar to a laboratory where he could study magic. Magicians called this place the magic workshop. Without a doubt, a magician's workshop was as important as a researcher's laboratory. Although it was not to the extent that no one was allowed to enter, it was not to the extent that people could simply barge in. In addition, magicians would generally set up all kinds of spells and barriers in their magic workshops. Some magicians would directly lead the enemy into their workshop during battle, and set up traps to snipe the enemy. Therefore, the magic workshop could be said to be a magician's last fortress. Rin Enbin's workshop was definitely in Enbin's house. As a magician with a long history, Enbin's house would definitely have all sorts of magic secrets. Moreover, the foundation of magic was concealment. Therefore, for a magician, although it was not a taboo, it was definitely not a good thing to allow others to barge into their house. However, Rin Enbin just left Noah and Saber in Enbin's house, which was really shocking. If something went wrong and Noah and Saber, who had the highest resistance to magic, accidentally came into contact with some important spell or barrier, causing the magic itself to be disintegrated, Rin and Osaka would be in deep trouble. Was Rin Enbin not worried about this? Of course, Noah did not think about it. From another point of view, he was also unreasonable as he was protecting Tama Tanjing and Saber. From this point of view, Noah and Rin Enbin were jackals of the same tribe. Without a choice, Noah could only let Saber take Tama Tanjing to rest in her room, and tell Saber not to run around. Then he followed Rin Enbin and left Enbin's house. Rin Hasaka, who noticed that Noah had caught up to him, stopped in his tracks and asked curiously, "Why are you following me?" "I want to ask you. What do you mean by doing things your own way?" Noah said helplessly. "Now, Archer is not by your side. Aren't you afraid of being taken advantage of by other masters and servants? That's impossible, right?" Rin Enbin was still confused. "It's daytime now. And then? Do you want to say that no master or servant will come to trouble you in the daytime?" Noah looked at Rin Enbin. "I can't believe you can still say something like that after Castor's example." Rin Inaka seemed to have just remembered Castor's matter, and his face became pale. "I forgot." Noah almost stumbled and fell to the ground. Forgot? How could he forget such an important thing? Well, it was indeed a good reason. For Rin Enbin, who would only drop the ball at the most critical moment, this reason was really good. Well, anyway, I still have the command seal. If something happens, I can call Archer back." Rin Enbin was trying to cover up his gaffe. He emphasized it with a bit of sophistry. "Besides, your servant is not by your side, right?" Noah suddenly smiled. "Are you sure you want to compare with me?" Rin Enbin was suddenly speechless. That's right. Comparing himself with Noah was the most stupid thing. Even if the servant was not by his side, Noah, who could confront Saber and Berserker, could also deal with other masters and servants. As for Rin Tozaka, although he was also an excellent magician, he was still no match for the spirit of a great hero who had once been a hero in his previous life. Even if the other side was just a spirit clone in the form of a servant, it was still the same. "I understand," Rin Enbin could only say with a dejected voice. "Then I'll trouble you to send me to school." "Well." Noah shrugged. "It's no trouble." After that, a man and a woman walked side by side in the direction of Suigunhara Academy. Because Rin Dosaka had gone to Noah's apartment to discuss Tong Sakura's matter, and he also had a battle with Castor, now the time was actually a bit tight. Under such circumstances, Noah and Rin Enbin both appropriately quickened their pace. "Oh right." Rin Enbin suddenly frowned. "Why isn't Ryder by your side?" From the beginning, Ryder was not in the apartment, so Castor unscrupulously broke into Noah's apartment. If Ryder was on alert, even if it couldn't prevent this situation, it should be able to inform Noah in advance and tell Noah that there was an enemy attack. Moreover, since the morning, even when Castor was fighting, Ryder did not appear. In addition, Noah personally admitted that Ryder was not by his side now, so Rin Enbin couldn't help but wonder. Hearing Rin Enbin's words, Noah narrowed his eyes. "I asked Ryder to find someone." "Find someone?" Rin Enbin was stunned. "Yes," Noah said with a blank expression. "I asked Ryder to find Tong Ying." Rin Enbin's face changed, then she clenched her teeth, and her eyes were filled with strong emotions. "Tong Ying? one of the three families in Fuyuki City, the real leader of the Tong family, and the nominal grandfather of Tong Ying. At the same time, he was also the culprit that made Tong Ying live a life of misery for more than 10 years. If it wasn't for the mysterious power that has been protecting Tong Ying, Rin Enbin didn't even dare to think about what would happen to Tong Ying now. When she thought of this, Rin Enbin's emotions were surging. She took a deep breath and suppressed it. If you find Tong Ying, what are you going to do? Nothing. Noah replied faintly. Just to avenge Sakura. Rin Enbin was silent. After a long time, Noah heard Rin Enbin's murmur. Why do you want to do this for Sakura? Hearing this, Noah couldn't help but be a little dazed. Thinking back to the first time they met, the girl who felt inferior, negative, and whose face was filled with unease all the time, recalling the girl who begged Noah to touch her in order to replenish the magical power of the scabbard in her body, recalling the girl who danced with him at the ball, was extremely confused about the future, and asked him questions. Recalling the girl who showed him a gentle smile in the archery department of Suechuan Gakuin Academy, recalling the girl's past and the scabbard that he had lost in the girl's body, Noah seemed to feel something and made such a statement. Perhaps, another reason I came to this world is to meet Sakura. Who knows? Rin Enbin suddenly looked at Noah in a daze. Looking at Noah's bitter smile, she didn't know why, but she blushed and deliberately snorted, then turned her head away. Even if you say such a cool line, it doesn't make you look that handsome. After saying this, Rin Enbin quickened her pace, as if she didn't want Noah to see her blushing face. Noah could only let out a bitter laugh and quickly chased after him. Chapter 754. After sending Rin and Osaka to Suigunhara Academy, Noah immediately left. Although there were examples like Castor who would launch an attack in broad daylight, in a school with so many people around, no matter which master or servant it was, they wouldn't dare to make a move so blatantly. In Suigunhara Academy, Rin and Osaka was still safe. Even if there was an accident, Rin and Osaka could still summon Archer to her side with her command spell. Therefore, Noah didn't need to protect her, and he didn't have that kind of obligation. Escorting Rin and Osaka to the academy was already benevolent enough. It was impossible for him to stay there and guard Rin and Osaka the whole day. Therefore, after Rin and Osaka entered the academy, Noah directly left. Seeing the stunned look of the surrounding students, Noah couldn't help but laugh. In any case, Rin and Osaka was still a young lady that everyone looked forward to. Everyone would be dumbfounded if an unknown man from outside the school sent such a charming and idol-like existence to the school. Noah only knew about it when Tong Ying mentioned it in the archery department. Rin and Osaka actually had such a side to her in the academy. However, he had to admit, in terms of appearance, Rin and Osaka did have the qualifications to be a popular and dignified young lady. Although her nature was like a little devil, and she often dropped the ball at the most critical moment, her curse-like physique made people not dare to compliment her. Noah ignored the stunned look of the surrounding students, left Suigunhara Academy, and walked in the direction of Osaka's residence. However, just as Noah passed by a commercial street, an unexpected voice with full of surprise called out to him. "Isn't this the big brother from the other day?" The person called Noah was like a clear drop of water falling on the surface of the water, very light, and full of cheerfulness and happiness. Judging from her voice, she was probably still underage. At best, she was around 13 or 14 years old. However, when he heard this voice, Noah's heart tightened. He suddenly turned his head and looked towards the source of the voice. On the other side of the street, a little girl with long hair that was more beautiful than the snow was standing there. She was wearing a snow jacket, a snow hat and snow boots. She looked like a little elf that had just been born in the snow. At this moment, the girl was happily raising one of her hands above her head and waving it at Noah. "Big brother. We meet again." The girl's cheerful and cute appearance made the pedestrians around her subconsciously stop in their tracks, their gazes converging on the other party. In particular, some of the men and women had stars in their eyes. There was no other way. That slightly immature-looking girl was simply too cute. She was so cute that even the most delicate dolls and mannequins couldn't compare to her. Under such circumstances, the surrounding pedestrians had no idea at all. 2 days ago, that Snow-White girl had just used an innocent smile to order her most loyal bodyguard to kill Noah and his group without mercy. Yes. The girl who looked like an angel was, in fact, a demon who would kill anyone with a cute smile on her face without hesitation. Impressively, it was Berserker's master, Ilyasful von Erzburn, one of the 3 families that created the Holy Grail War. The Erzburn family. Encountering Ilya on such a busy road, Noah couldn't hold back and showed a trace of surprise. Ilyasful. Hearing how Noah addressed her, the smile on Ilya's cute face slowly disappeared, and was replaced by a puffed-up cheeks and a very dissatisfied expression. Lifting her little feet and walking towards Noah, Ilya spoke to Noah in dissatisfaction. "You can just call me Ilya." Seeing Ilya walking in front of him puffing up her cheeks and pretending to be angry, Noah almost lost his vigilance against this master, who had a servant that couldn't be ignored. At that moment, Noah asked almost reflexively, "Why are you here?" "I came here to play," Ilya answered without hesitation. The expression on her face changed from dissatisfaction to happiness in an instant. "It's too boring to stay in the castle, so I came out to play in the town." "Castle?" Noah asked in confusion. "Ah, big brother, have you forgotten?" Ilya put her little hands behind her back and slightly leaned her upper body towards Noah's direction. She smiled until her eyes narrowed. "Didn't I say that in the depths of the forest, there is our Erzburn villa?" After Ilya said this, Noah remembered. Indeed, Ilya did say such a sentence. But Ilya also said that it was only a villa. Since when did a villa become a castle? Or to Ilya, the castle in the depths of the forest was just a villa? So that's how it is. Noah's mouth twitched. "You are the real rich person." Ilya immediately tilted her head. "Rich person? No, don't mind it." Noah looked around and said. He looked around and seemed to be a little absent-minded. "Big brother, are you looking for Berserker?" Ilya seemed to see through Noah's thoughts and suddenly smiled. "Don't worry, Ilya didn't bring Berserker out today." "Didn't bring Berserker out with you?" Noah finally frowned and stared at Ilya. "You ran out alone without bringing a servant? Aren't you afraid of being attacked by other masters?" "I can't help it. Berserker is too overprotective. If I bring him out, he will definitely go berserk on the streets," Ilya said matter-of-factly. "In that case, I won't be able to play anymore, right?" Hearing Ilya's words, Noah wanted to correct 2 points. 1. Berserker isn't overprotective, that's called going berserk. 2. If Berserker goes berserk on a crowded street, it will not only cause you, the master, to be unable to play with him, but it will also cause a lot of unnecessary casualties. And Ilya's words proved that this cute little girl didn't care about 1 or 2 lives at all. For Ilya, when Berserker went berserk, what she really cared about was whether she could play or not and not other people's lives. Sure enough, this little girl was a magician with the appearance of an angel and the heart of a demon. Big brother doesn't seem to have brought a servant, right? Ilya curiously looked around Noah, and suddenly thought of something and her eyes lit up. Could it be that big brother also came to play? "I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not here to play." Noah rubbed his eyebrows. "I'm just sending Tozaka to school. Her servant isn't with her." "Send Ling to school?" Ilya immediately bit one of her fingers and puffed up her cheeks. "In other words, big brother will only accompany Ling and not accompany me?" "Accompany you?" Noah sighed. "Accompany you for what? To fight?" "No, I'm here to play today," Ilya said with a smile. "So you have to accompany me to play?" Noah was stunned and almost couldn't keep up with this development. "Why do I have to accompany you to play? Isn't that obvious?" Ilya showed the cutest smile Noah had ever seen and said such a sentence. "Because I like big brother very much." In the surroundings, the pedestrians who had been paying attention to Ilya heard this sentence, and many people fell on the street, hit the street lamps, and some even collided with each other and fell to the ground. The remaining pedestrians who weren't crushed by Ilya's confession fell silent for a moment. Then they looked at Noah with murderous and disdainful gazes. Noah broke out in cold sweat. What kind of development is this? Chapter 755. Humph. Humming a pleasant tune, Ilya hugged Noah's arm tightly. Her delicate and pretty face was full of joy and happiness. She followed Noah's footsteps and skipped forward. She seemed to be in a good mood. Noah, whose arm was tightly hugged by Ilya, was troubled. Strictly speaking, Ilya should be Noah's enemy. When she did not have Berserker by her side, it was undoubtedly the easiest to deal with. Even if Ilya had the command spell, and could summon Berserker at any time, as long as he dealt with Ilya in the first blow, nothing would happen. Undoubtedly, in such a situation, Ilya was not even on guard against Noah. How could Noah not be troubled? After all, Noah did not feel any falsehood from Ilya's expression that was full of joy and happiness. In other words, Ilya either had some means to ensure that nothing would happen to her, or she did not consider that Noah would attack her at this time. Intuition told Noah that the reason why Ilya stuck to him so unscrupulously should not be the former, but the latter. In other words, Ilya did not consider that Noah would attack her at this time. Does Ilya trust Noah? That's not true. She just did not think about it from the bottom of her heart. From this aspect, Ilya was indeed quite naive. She did not have the self-awareness that a magician should have. Just like her appearance, she was just a little girl who had yet to reach adulthood. However, such a little girl who looked like she had yet to reach adulthood could casually make the decision to kill. Such two contradictory aspects were like the existence of an angel and a demon in that small body, making Noah very troubled. Of course, Noah did not think of attacking Ilya in this situation. Noah was not the kind of person who would do anything for a certain goal regardless of the target. Noah's methods were generally different from person to person. If the opponent was upright, then Noah would face it in an upright way. If the opponent was treacherous and cunning, then Noah wouldn't mind returning the favor and biting back at the opponent. In addition, although Noah and Ilya were enemies, it was only in terms of position. They did not have such a serious sense of mission like Rin and Osaka. In participating in the Holy Grail War, Noah's fundamental purpose was to find the world fragment, not to kill them all. Therefore, Noah could always be so carefree. However, Noah was a little unsure what kind of person Ilya was. An upright person? An upright person? A sinister and cunning person? None of them, right? Because of this, Noah, who was a little unsure of how to face Ilya, was so troubled. He could only accompany Ilya. Then, while Noah was still troubled, Ilya, who was hugging Noah's arm and standing together with Noah like a pair of siblings with a good relationship, suddenly pointed at a place and shook Noah's hand. "Hey, big brother, I want to eat that." Noah, who returned to his senses because of Ilya's voice, subconsciously looked in the direction of Ilya's little finger. There was a small stall there. "That's a crepe? It looks very delicious." Ilya used a pitiful gaze that could sink anyone and spoke with some hope in her voice. "Big brother, will you buy it for me to eat?" "Well, I don't mind." Noah scratched his cheek. "But aren't you rich? Can't you afford a crepe?" "Although I don't know what big brother is judging, I won't bring money. The money is all brought by the maid beside me," Ilya said with a smile. "Also, I only want to eat what big brother buys now." Ilya's words could easily capture the hearts of others, making them unable to help but feel tender love and joy. Noah wasn't directly captured by Ilya's cute words, but he also had no reason to refuse. He could only smile bitterly. "I'll go buy it, right? Just wait for me here." "Okay." Ilya nodded in satisfaction and obediently let go of Noah's hand. She put her small hands behind her back and looked around curiously. Seeing this, Noah couldn't help but reveal a smile. He turned around and walked in the direction of the crepe stall. When Noah bought 2 crepes from the stall and headed in Ilya's direction, the scene that entered his eyes left him slightly stunned. "Hey, little girl, are you walking on the streets alone?" Unknowingly, several men in their 30s and 40s had gathered around Ilya. They had hooligan-like expressions on their faces and were speaking to Ilya passionately. "Judging from your appearance, you're a foreigner, right? Don't you have a guardian by your side? Could it be that you're lost? Do you want us to bring you to your mother?" While saying those words, those middle-aged hoodlums were sizing up Ilya. It was as if they were evaluating a product. It was very dazzling. Don't tell me they're human traffickers? Noah couldn't help but think so. Facing the harassment of the hooligans, the innocent smile on Ilya's face had completely disappeared. Instead, it was replaced with a look of boredom and lack of interest. Undoubtedly, they're so much older than me. But they don't even know the most basic etiquette toward a lady. I see. So there are such people here too? Oh, you seem to be rather cultured. One of the middle-aged men twitched his brows and wore a somewhat vulgar smile on his face. Sorry, we're not gentlemen or ladies. But we know a lot about the matters between men and women. If you're curious, how about letting us teach you? The middle-aged man said and gestured to his companions around him. His companions immediately understood, and one of them even made a phone call. Not long after, a car drove over and stopped there, blocking the line of sight of the pedestrians in the surroundings. Looking at this, anyone could understand what was going on. Those people were a group of human traffickers. Ilya clearly didn't know what the people surrounding her were planning to do to her. But as a magician, Ilya more or less sensed the malice of others. At that moment, a coquettish smile hung on Ilya's immature, but incomparably adorable face, and her ruby-like eyes were suffused with a cruel glint. It's a pity that Ilya isn't interested in you at all. Moreover, she feels that you're an eyesore. Eyesores should be thrown into the sewers and washed away with the sewage. Saying such cruel words with such a cute voice made all the middle-aged traffickers around her stiffen. Some of them couldn't even move. That wasn't a metaphor. They really couldn't move. Because even if they were ordinary people, they could still instinctively feel it. The young girl in front of him seemed to have turned from harmless to extremely dangerous. The middle-aged man who had just gestured to his companions and used vulgar words to instigate Ilya shouted angrily, "You're just a brat. Come with us obediently." After saying that, the middle-aged man wanted to pounce on Ilya, but a hand suddenly landed on his shoulder. I should be the one saying that. Along with this sentence, the middle-aged man felt the hand on his shoulder suddenly tighten. Then his entire body floated up. That was the result of the other party forcefully throwing him. Bang! The middle-aged man heavily crashed into the door of the car that had come to pick them up. Moreover, he knocked his head against the door, causing his head to bleed. His head tilted to one side and he fainted. Around them, the human traffickers turned pale with fright. However, before they could react, one after another, a hand was suddenly placed on their shoulders. Then one after another, they flew out and crashed into the car as well. What's wrong? As soon as the assistant driver shouted this sentence, a fist was imprinted on his face. With a bang, the driver fainted. Chapter 756. Looking at the sudden development in front of her, Ilya was stunned. In front of Ilya, Noah appeared to have completed an insignificant task. He held 2 crepes in one hand, and extended his other hand to pull open the door of the human trafficker. Then he threw the badly battered human traffickers into the carriage one after another. Noah was not as merciful to these traffickers as he was to ordinary hooligans. There is no need for a guy who would even lay his hands on children to continue to survive in this world. This sentence contained both rationality and selfishness. In the world of the Dark Bullet, Noah was famous for the shelter of the cursed child. For the sake of those poor children, he even made the choice to let the Tokyo area be destroyed by primitive animals. As previously mentioned, Noah's way of treating people was different from person to person. Facing people who were upright and upright, he would face them in the same upright and upright manner. For insidious and cunning people, he would return the favor with the same insidious and cunning means. But children were not included in this list. Children as pure as a piece of white paper would walk towards the upright side, or the insidious and cunning side in the future. It had not been decided yet. Therefore, for these children who were like white papers, waiting for the world, waiting for society, waiting for the environment, and waiting for others to dye their colors, Noah's treatment had always been biased. Therefore, Noah had no need to show mercy to these traffickers who trafficked children. At that moment, after Noah threw all the traffickers into the carriage, he turned around. Gotcha! The next moment, in the car full of traffickers, a slight sound sounded. Soon after, the carriage suddenly drove forward. In front of the car, there was an entrance to an expanded sewer under construction. The undriven car directly rushed into the entrance of the sewer under construction and fell into the sewer. Bang! Not long after, accompanied by a muffled sound that reverberated in the sealed tunnel, the pedestrians around the sewer entrance began to approach noisily. It was just as Ilya had said. The group of human traffickers were all thrown into the sewers and washed away with the dirty water. Noah did not even turn his head, ignoring the noise and clamor behind him, and handed a crepe to Ilya, who was still in a daze. "I bought the crepe for you." Ilya took the crepe reflexively, then finally reacted. She cast her gaze on Noah's face, and ripples appeared in her ruby-like eyes. "What's wrong?" Noah, who was stared at by Ilya, had a strange expression. "Is there something strange on my face?" Ilya shook her head and blinked. The expression in her eyes was brighter than ever. "Brother, are you protecting me?" "No, I'm just being nosy." Noah bitterly. "With your ability, you don't need my protection to deal with 1 or 2 traffickers, right?" "Liar, brother is protecting me." An unprecedented smile appeared on Ilya's face, and she hugged Noah with joy. "I'm so happy. Other than Berserker, there is actually someone who will protect Ilya. I'm so happy." "What do you mean?" Noah, who was hugged, wanted to bitterly smile again, but Ilya's words surprised him on the spot. "What do you mean by other than Berserker? There is actually someone who will protect you. Could it be that other than Berserker, there is no one who will protect you?" "No." Ilya hugged Noah, and with a smile on her face, she said something that would not make anyone happy. Even if there is, it wouldn't be to protect Ilya. Instead, it would be to protect Ahrensburg's works and the Holy Grail. Only Berserker would protect Ilya. Everyone said that Ilya's servant was used to protect Ilya. Hearing Ilya's words, Noah became more and more confused. Protect Einstein Baron's works and Holy Grail? What does that mean? Before Noah could come up with an answer, Ilya, who was tightly hugging Noah, suddenly raised her head and met Noah's gaze with her ruby-like eyes. Then, a smile that was no different from a demon's and as pure as an angel's appeared on Ilya's face, and she said these words. "I've decided I'm going to make Big Brother mine." After saying that, Ilya's ruby-like eyes flickered with a frightening light. An astonishing magic power aura emerged from Ilya's body, making Ilya's flickering eyes even brighter and more frightening. Magic power even passed through those beautiful eyes and was projected onto Noah's body. Feeling the magic power surging from Ilya's body being projected onto his body along with Ilya's gaze, Noah frowned. Projecting magic and magic power onto others through one's gaze, thereby producing magic effects. That was clearly the magic eye. In other words, Ilya was using the magic eye on Noah. Unfortunately, it had no effect on Noah. The magic power projected onto Noah through Ilya's magic eye had just touched him, but before it could take effect, it scattered as if it had hit a solid wall. The bright light in Ilya's ruby-like eyes suddenly dimmed, making Ilya reveal a surprised expression. "It didn't work?" "Unfortunately, magic doesn't work on me." Noah turned his gaze to the surprised Ilya. "However, I didn't expect that you would suddenly attack me." Noah finally understood more or less what kind of person this cute little girl in front of him was. She had the side of an innocent child and a cruel, ruthless, and indifferent side. He would do whatever he wanted to do, and would never consider whether he would bring trouble to others, or perhaps even bring trouble to himself. In short, she was a willful and reckless young lady, who didn't know how to restrain herself at all. Once she had an idea, she would put it into action, regardless of how dangerous it was. Her personality was already a bit twisted. Magic doesn't work on Big Brother? Ilya didn't realize how easily she made a move that would make others view her with hostility. She puffed up her cheeks as if it was natural. "If that's the case, I won't be able to make Big Brother mine, right?" Seeing that Ilya didn't even have a trace of self-reflection, Noah stared at this little girl, and his tone became more or less ruthless. What do you think life is?" Noah's ruthless tone made Ilya unable to react. "I won't say stupid things like life is precious. No matter where it is, there are some people who don't deserve pity even if they die. But similarly, no matter where it is, there are some lives that shouldn't be lost for unknown reasons." Noah said indifferently. That's why I hate killing innocent people. Since young, Makarov had said this to Noah more than once. Even if it was magic, if it touched life, it would become taboo. It wasn't because life was particularly precious. Instead, it was because treating life as something that could be used or discarded was twisted to begin with. Therefore, magic that touched life was a taboo among taboo. That theory was simply worthless in this world. Not to mention anything else, magicians were a group of existences that would casually kill. Noah wouldn't blindly listen to Makarov's words. Noah was flexible enough to listen to his grandfather's words. Indeed, some lives were very precious. But some lives were filthy and didn't deserve pity even if they died. And Noah was very disgusted with the indiscriminate killing of innocents that would erase life regardless of good or bad. Since he wanted to kill, then why not kill those who deserve to die? This was Noah's thought. I don't expect you to listen to me. Noah turned around. I only hope that you can at least consider it carefully. Leaving this sentence, Noah left. Looking at Noah's back that gradually disappeared into the distance, Ilya remained silent for a long time. Chapter 757. Noah didn't tell anyone about his accidental encounter with Ilya, and the fact that they had spent some time together. As if nothing had happened, Noah went straight back to Inosaka's house. He found that Saber hadn't come out of her room, and she had been guarding Yamamoto Sakura the whole time. So he went to the room that Inosaka had designated as his room to take a nap. If he didn't sleep now, he might not have a chance to sleep at night. After all, master and servant were active at night. If there were no problems on Archer's side, then tonight, Rin Tasaka would probably call Noah and act together. In fact, it was indeed as Noah expected. After it got dark, Enbin, who didn't know when he came back, knocked on Noah's door, and didn't give Noah a chance to answer. Come to the hall, Archer has found Castor's base. Upon hearing this, Noah, who had replenished his energy, slowly curled up the corners of his mouth. In the hall of Enbin's house, the warm light illuminated the surroundings. Sitting on the sofa, which was equivalent to the head of the house, Enbin first glanced at Noah, who was sitting on a chair opposite to him, and then looked at Saber, who was sitting in another seat in a dignified posture. Why is Saber here? Noah shrugged, indicating that he didn't know, which made Enbin roll his eyes. Have you found Castor's base? Under Enbin's gaze, Saber said with a calm face, if you want to fight against Castor, then let me join you. For Saber's words, Noah smiled as if he had expected it. On the other hand, Rin Asaka continued to stare at Saber and spoke bluntly. What's your purpose? As a servant, I only have one purpose from beginning to end. Saber replied firmly. Destroy other servants and win this Holy Grail war. Is there anything wrong with that? No, there is nothing wrong with that. Enbin was not willing to be outdone. But our servants are also in your range of elimination, right? This is the same for you, it's just a matter of order. Although we are in a cooperative relationship, in the end, we still need to determine the winner. Saber fearlessly looked at Enbin's eyes. Sakura hasn't recovered her consciousness yet, which makes us very passive. Instead of being passive, it's better to follow your order. Rin and Osaka understood what he meant. In other words, you also want to form a cooperative relationship with us? Now that Master can't act, I think this is the best policy. Saber glanced at Noah. Moreover, although we are enemies, the degree of kindness will not be affected by whether we are enemies or not. As a knight, I have the obligation to repay your kindness. Saber was referring to the fact that Noah had taken her in without asking for anything in return. So that's how it is. What a noble knight. Rin Inosaka said nonchalantly as he brushed his long hair aside. Well, with the help of the strongest Saber, it's a good thing for us. What do you think? The last sentence was directed at Noah. I have no opinion. Noah was also indifferent. Anyway, we can't fight now, so we might as well cooperate first and solve the other servants. Saber nodded in agreement. Very wise judgment. Then it's decided. Rin and Osaka tapped on the table and called out. Then come out and explain, Archer. As soon as Enbin's words fell, Archer's figure appeared behind him. From the original spiritual state, He entered the physical state, and entered the eyes of everyone present. Castor's current base is in Liudongji. As soon as he appeared, Archer gave such information with a unique and calm voice. This morning, Castor retreated to Liudongji, and then he didn't move. In order to confirm whether it was the witch's plot, I specially monitored the place for a day. Now, we can basically confirm that Liudongji is Castor's base. Liudongji. Noah and Enbin pondered at the same time. Liudongji. It was a temple in Fuyuki City, not a shrine. However, it was a very special place. Liudongji was a rare spiritual place in Fuyuki City. A witch actually hid in a temple? Noah curled his lips. It's really not flattering. Are you sure that Castor's base is in Liudongji? Saber also looked at Archer. Is it possible that Castor deliberately misled you? At first, I thought so too, but after careful investigation, I gave up on this suspicion. Archer closed his eyes. Castor has already set up a position in Liudongji, and the influence of that position has extended to the entire Fuyuki City. Now all the residents of Fuyuki City have become Castor's magical storage. Their vitality has been extracted and converted into magical power, and all of them are flowing to Liudongji. What did you say? Enbin's face finally changed. Castor is extracting the vitality of the residents of Fuyuki City? Even Noah and Saber had their eyes fixed on him, let alone Rin and Naka. It can't be wrong, Archer said in a deep voice. If the range of influence is so wide, every master and servant should be aware of it. If you go out and look carefully, you will find the flow of magical power. The audience was suddenly silent. Don't think that I will just stand by and watch, Castor's servant. Rin Enbin bit his lips and immediately said. Now that we have determined Castor's base, let's attack Liudongji tonight. Is that okay? As if he had already expected Enbin to say that, Archer asked as if he was ready. That place is Castor's base. Castor's ability will be more or less improved, plus the magical power of the entire Fuyuki City's residents will be used as a storage for the witch. Breaking in like this is like directly breaking into a trap. Is that okay? If it's just us, maybe we will really think about it. But now there are two masters and servants here. I don't think Castor's little trick will work. Enbin looked at Noah. By the way, can your rider come over? Rider can come over at any time. Noah replied calmly. However, with this lineup, I don't think we need Rider to come out. Let her continue her task. In case something happens, I will directly use the command seal to summon Rider. Enbin pondered for a moment, and then nodded. Saber's heart slightly moved. Task? Don't worry about it. It's just a trivial matter. Noah spread his hands. Saber, since you plan to go with us, what are you going to do about Sakura? Is this Ling's magic workshop? Saber said without flinching. Then Sakura should be safe here. Noah smiled noncommittally. Safe. Of course she was safe. With the scabbard's protection, nothing will happen to Sakura. Then it's decided. Enbin said decisively. Tonight, we will attack Liudongji and kill Castor. Saber and Archer nodded at the same time. Noah looked out of the window, and his eyes flashed. Indeed, it's time to withdraw. Chapter 758. The night gradually deepened. At the foot of a mountain, Noah, Rin, Saber, and Rin raised their heads and looked ahead. To be more precise, they were looking upwards. None of them spoke. They were all silent. In front of Noah and the rest, there was a stone staircase on the mountain that wasn't very tall. The stone staircase was very long, as if it extended directly into the sky. It made them feel small and insignificant. The long stone staircase would definitely make anyone who wanted to climb it feel slightly dispirited. If a normal person wanted to climb the stone staircase, it would take at least 30 minutes. Fortunately, at the end of the stone staircase, Noah and the rest found a mountain gate. Behind the mountain gate was a temple called Ludong Temple. However, whether it was Noah, Rin Enbin, or Saber, they were not looking at the mountain gate or the long stone staircase. Instead, they were looking at a barrier that could not be seen with the naked eye. It was a barrier that enveloped the entire mountain. That's a barrier, right? Noah looked in front of him and asked without turning his head. A barrier used to drive people away? Or a concealment barrier? What a pity. Rin and Osaka's expression became serious. Neither. That's a barrier used on servants. Saber gave the answer directly, but her expression was also very serious. Moreover, it doesn't look like it was set up by someone. It's a naturally formed barrier against spirits, right? A naturally formed barrier. Noah was surprised. There's such a barrier? There's nothing to be surprised about. You must have heard of it before. Rin and Osaka answered for Noah. Places like temples and shrines are filled with very dense spiritual energy. This kind of spiritual energy can repel all kinds of monsters and monsters. It's a sacred place where those monsters and monsters can't approach. This is a similar place. Saber continued Rin and Osaka's words, and continued to explain to Noah. Servants are spirits. Although they aren't ghosts or spirits, they are similar existences. Therefore, other than entering through the mountain gate, servants shouldn't be able to enter Ludong Temple directly, right? Even servants can be affected. Noah continued to look at the high mountain gate. That's really surprising. This should be the only special place, right? Rin and Osaka said to Noah. I don't know if it's because some eminent monk once passed away here, or because Ludong Temple itself is an unusually spiritual place, or maybe someone deliberately set it up behind the scenes. All in all, the property of expelling spirits around this temple seems to have been strengthened to the limit. Except for this stone staircase, there's no way for servant to enter. In other words, as a servant, Saber has to barge in openly. There's no way to sneak in, right? Noah shrugged helplessly. Then what should we do? Of course, we have to break in directly. Rin and Osaka clenched his fist. I must teach that arrogant caster a lesson. After saying this, Rin and Osaka directly stepped onto the stone staircase and walked towards the mountain gate. Seeing this, Noah and Saber looked at each other and followed. As for Archer, he didn't follow from the beginning. As an archer, Rin and Osaka sent Archer to occupy a commanding position in the surrounding area, ready to support at any time. However, Noah was more or less suspicious. Was there really a place higher than the mountain in front of him? Could it be that Rin and Osaka was habitually dropping the ball? With such doubts, the three of them climbed up the stone staircase and walked towards the mountain gate. However, when the three of them arrived at the mountain gate, Noah and Saber stopped at the same time. Noah stretched out his hand and directly pulled Rin and Osaka to his side. Saber, on the other hand, raised her invisible sword and pointed it in the direction of the mountain gate. Rin and Osaka, who was about to complain to Noah, saw it. In front of the mountain gate, there was a person. A man who was as tall as Archer, had a long dark blue ponytail, and was holding a 2-meter-long katana in his hand. He was wearing a light purple kimono and had a tree branch in the corner of his mouth. He was looking down at Noah and his team with an elegant smile. Servant. Rin and Osaka was surprised. Yes, that man was also a servant, not caster. Noah was also surprised. There's a second servant in Ryodong Temple? Even Saber was caught off guard. She raised her sword and spoke in a solemn voice. Who are you? Hearing Saber's question, the elegant man's smile didn't fade. He just gently raised the katana in his hand and introduced himself. Assassin's servant, Sasaki Kojiro. The introduction of the assassin's servant stunned everyone, including Noah. That servant had even revealed his real name? Was he not afraid that someone would find his weakness and research his noble phantasm? And Sasaki Kojiro? Although this name was not as famous as those heroes in myths and legends, it was a name that almost everyone in this country knew. That was because it came from a very famous swordsman from the Warring States period of this country. At that moment, Noah and Rin and Osaka's eyes flashed. Profession: assassin pseudo, master? Real name: Sasaki Kojiro. Attribute: neutral, evil ability points. Strength, C durability, E agility. A plus magic power, E luck. A noble phantasm, profession skills or a concealment. D since he wasn't an official assassin class servant. Even though this skill was classified as a class skill, it was a skill that the assassin himself possessed. As a martial artist, it wasn't a skill for sneaking and hiding. Instead, it was a skill that the assassin used to blend into his surroundings. It wasn't a skill that was honed for assassination. It wasn't as effective as the assassin's ability to conceal his presence. However, if he eliminated his presence, he would still be an opponent that even a servant would have a hard time detecting. Preservation skills. Mind's Eye, Pseudo-8 belonged to the so-called premonition, or sixth sense skills. It was different from Mind's Eye True, which was based on prediction supported by experience. It was based on the ability to predict danger based on his natural talent. He could see through the opponent's weapon and fighting style in just a few confrontations. That pair of eyes, even among the servants, was second to none. Transparency. B+ generally, the ability called Mirror Still Water, referred to the spiritual realm that had been reached after rigorous training. After learning this skill, one could always maintain a clear and calm heart. They could even be indifferent to any situation, even if it was their own death. In battle, they could even completely nullify the confusion and fear caused by the opponent, which was represented by magic that interfered with the mind. Zhonghe's experience. Even if the same move was repeated countless times against the same opponent, the accuracy of the hit would not decrease. In other words, this was an ability that had the effect of not being seen through by the enemy. No matter how many times the enemy wanted to retreat or challenge again, they would not be able to see through the moves that were supported by this skill. They would always be forced to fight the same battle as the first time they met. Swallow Return. A+, it was a sword technique that simultaneously slashed apart the opponent's killing sword from 3 different directions. It was neither a precious artifact nor a phenomenon that borrowed magic. It was a sword that was slashed out from the real world, disregarding the concept of time and space, and completely slashed out with 2 swords at the same time. It was a superb technique that was truly capable of slashing out 3 swords at the same time in the same second, and at the same moment. It was a multidimensional distortion phenomenon that surpassed the elements of speed, delicacy, and feints. Although there were limitations, it had also reached the high-level domain of part of the realm of magic. Chapter 759. When the ability value of Assassin, who claimed to be Sasaki Kojiro, entered Noah's mind, even Noah couldn't help but be stunned on the spot. Rin Enben probably couldn't see it, but Noah really saw it. In the part of Assassin's profession, there was a special standard word fake. Assassin fake? What does this mean? Undoubtedly, he was Assassin's servant. Why did he specifically add the word fake? On top of that, the part of Assassin's class skill, which was the part where the aura was blocked, clearly stated that Assassin wasn't a real assassin, which puzzled Noah even more. Coupled with the various information revealed by Assassin's skills, Noah's doubts in his heart were even stronger. Let's not talk about the ability value for the time being. From the information revealed by the opponent's skills, it could be seen that the opponent was not so much an assassin, but a saber. Not only did he possess a high mental state, but he also possessed a deadly sword technique. If it were not for the fact that his ability value did not meet the excessive requirements of the saber class, Noah would definitely be more willing to believe that his opponent was a saber. After all, the assassin job class was a job class that specialized in stealth and assassination techniques. The elegant man in front of him was standing in front of everyone, holding a long weapon that was obviously not suitable for assassination at all. There was nothing that matched with Assassin's profession. Also, the opponent's noble phantasm was the same as Archer's, which was also empty. There were too many doubts. Rin Enben, who didn't have as much information as Noah, clicked his tongue and held a gem in his hand. So that's how it is, knowing that there is no way to resist us with your own strength. Castor cooperated with your master, right? Work together with my master? Assassin closed her eyes and smiled without denying it. No, you're wrong. Originally, I don't have a master to speak of. As soon as this sentence came out, before everyone could react, a somewhat flirtatious laughter echoed. He's right, little girl. If Assassin has a master, then I am his master. Accompanied by such a sentence, a black shadow suddenly appeared behind Assassin. She lifted her black robe, revealing only the part of her face below her eyes, and laughed out loud. If you want to say why, it's because I'm the one who summoned him. Castor. Rin Enben's beautiful face suddenly tightened. Her hand holding the gem was getting tighter and tighter, and she even prepared to throw it. Rin and Osaka really had a lot of hostility towards Castor. However, it wasn't because of the hostility and excitement in her heart, but because of the message in Castor's words. Are you the one who summoned assassin? Noah looked straight at Castor. What do you mean by that? That's what it means, Writer's Master. Castor's purplish-red lips made a sound of laughter. This Holy Grail War was originally a game where the master, as a magician, summoned the servant and fought with each other. So why can't I, as a magician, summon the servant and become the master? Servant summoned servant. Saber, who was holding her sword, had a grimace on her cute face. Did you violate the rules of the Holy Grail War? The so-called Holy Grail War was actually a ritual. The ritual required the 7 chosen masters to summon their servants, and then they would fight until there was only one servant left. Then the ritual would be declared over. There was no doubt that Castor violated the rules of the Holy Grail War by summoning a servant and taking away the position of a master. It was precisely because of this that the assassin summoned by Castor was not the real assassin. Instead, it was Sasaki Kojiro who did not meet the requirements of the assassin class at all. Noah finally understood the meaning of the word fake. I didn't expect that in order to win, you would not hesitate to go to this extent. You mercilessly absorbed the vitality of the entire Fuyuki city's residents as magical power, which violated the rules. I have to say, I underestimated your unscrupulous means. Unscrupulous means? Violated the rules? Noah's words directly made Castor laugh. Don't joke around. Writer's Master is just a boring ritual established by a group of modern magicians. Although this level of ritual is a bit cumbersome, in my opinion, there are too many loopholes. If it weren't for the prize, I wouldn't mind directly dissolving the whole ritual. You want to use me as a pawn in the ritual. It's already very unpleasant. Hearing this, Noah finally recalled what had happened. The Castor in front of him was from the mythological era, and he mastered the magic of the mythological era. His magic attainments have surpassed the existence of magicians. In the eyes of a magician of the god generation whose magic attainments could be said to be terrifying, the ritual established by the 3 magician families called the Holy Grail War was indeed not a big deal, right? It's the magician's privilege to exploit the loopholes of the ritual itself and seize the results for himself. Castor sneered again and again. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame the magicians who established this ritual for not having the ability to master it. After that, Castor waved his hand as if he was tired of continuing the conversation. So, the time for a pleasant chat is almost over. Everyone, let me wash away the shame during the day. Rin and Osaka and Saber immediately took a fighting stance. Only Noah still looked calm, looking straight at Castor. What? Don't you want to let your master fight again? Hearing that, Castor sneered on his face. That's not necessary. However, just as these words fell, a low voice that could be said to be emotionless, not even the slightest fluctuation, resounded from within the mountain gate. This time your judgment is wrong, Castor. Castor was shocked when he heard the voice. He turned his head and looked inside the mountain gate. At the same time, Noah and the others also looked inside the mountain gate. He saw a tall and thin man in a suit, who was about 30 or 40 years old, leaning against the pillar of the mountain gate at some point in time. He looked down with emotionless eyes. You. Rin and Osaka was shocked. Gumu-sensei? Sensei. Noah raised his eyebrows. He's a teacher in your school? Master. Castor also spoke, and there was a little bit of panic in his expression. How can you come to this place? I know you're here for my safety. Gumu walked slowly, his voice was full of indifference. But Castor, this time the enemy is only you and Assassin, 2 people can't deal with it. Castor was speechless. A barbarian like me should come out and fight. It's not suitable for me to stay in the back. Gumu said indifferently. So Castor, start to deal with the enemy now. Hearing that, Castor's face changed a few times and finally he took a deep breath. I understand, Soichiro Gumu. The atmosphere at the scene suddenly became very tense. This atmosphere told Noah. Tonight, he would not stop as he had done before. Chapter 760. Who dash? The whistling mountain wind directly swept through the entire mountain path, causing the robes of the two groups of people standing in front of the mountain gate at the middle and top of the stone steps to flutter loudly in the wind. Looking up at Gumu Soichiro, caster, and assassin standing in front of the mountain gate, Noah couldn't help but ask Rin Enbin on the side. "Enbin, are you okay?" Noah asked this sentence inexplicably. However, Rin Inosaka understood him. "Don't worry about me." Rin Enbin's voice didn't have the slightest trace of reluctance. He seemed to have recovered his calmness. "Although Gumu Soichiro is a teacher in our school, my relationship with him is not as good as you think. You don't need to worry about me. The problem is that the number of servants we have to deal with has changed from 1 to 2. From 1 to 2? Caster, who clearly heard Rin Enbin's words, suddenly snickered. "You're wrong again, little girl. You don't have to deal with 2 servants, but 3. 3. Noah, Rin Enbin, and Saber's heart skipped a beat. "That's right, 3. Caster's smile was getting more and more creepy, as if he was trying to make people feel uneasy. "A servant suddenly came to me and said that his master wanted a little girl, but the lineup on your side was a little bit against the rules, so he came to me and wanted to cooperate with me." Speaking of this, Caster's voice became a little bit malicious. "So now let's guess, where did that servant go?" This time, Caster's words really brought uneasiness to Rin Enbin. Even Saber couldn't help but bite her lips. Her face finally emerged a thorny expression. Only Noah, after hearing Caster's words, almost immediately launched his sensing ability. In the range of Noah's sensing ability, except for the people present, there were almost no other servants. However, Noah didn't think that Caster was talking nonsense. In other words, the servant who cooperated with Caster was not near Ludong Temple. Undoubtedly, they had cooperated, but the person was not here? This fact allowed Noah to come to a conclusion. That servant was obviously not used to deal with the people here. Thinking of this, Noah immediately thought of another possibility. He was shocked and grabbed Rin Enbin. "Summon Archer. Quick." When Rin Enbin heard Noah's words, he was also stunned. Then, he inferred a possibility from Noah's words, and his expression changed. Without any hesitation, Rin Enbin raised his hand with the command seal over his head. "Come here quickly, Archer." The command seal engraved on the back of Rin Enbin's hand immediately glowed red. Clank! Red light flashed, and it didn't take long for the command seal on the back of Rin Enbin's hand to turn it into a huge amount of magic power that rippled through the entire space. Buzz! Suddenly, the space around Rin Enbin suddenly distorted, as if something was spat out, and a red body was squeezed out. The person who came was naturally Archer, who was summoned by Rin Enbin. Pucci. However, as soon as he appeared, Archer spat out a mouthful of blood and knelt on the ground, clutching his chest. His tanned face became extremely pale, and he was violently gasping for breath. Taking a closer look, Archer's body was covered in scorch marks, and one of his hands was bleeding like a crack. He was in a sorry state. Archer, Rin Enbin and Saber were shocked at the same time, and even Noah's face slightly sank. Sure enough, the opponent's purpose was to first destroy Archer, who could provide support from a distance. Otherwise, with Archer's support, the situation would be very unfavorable for caster and assassin. Fortunately, Rin Enbin summoned Archer. Otherwise, Archer would be likely to directly retreat from the opponent's attack. "Did you find out so quickly?" Seeing that Archer was seriously injured, but he didn't need to retreat, Caster snorted. "Sure enough, it's not good to give too many hints. I should reflect on myself." Ignoring Caster's regretful words, Noah still looked at the sky. Because of the unexpected result, his face became calmer and calmer. "Lancer is the one who cooperated with you, right?" Among the 7 servants, only Saber, Caster, and Assassin were present. Ryder was performing Noah's task, so it was impossible for him to attack Archer. And Archer himself naturally wouldn't beat himself up like this. So only Berserker and Lancer could cooperate with Caster. From Noah's point of view, Ilya wouldn't be interested in cooperating with Caster at all. With the almost immortal Berserker as a servant, Ilya didn't need to cooperate with anyone. So only Lancer was left. Very smart, Ryder's master, but even if you know it's useless, this is the result of being my enemy. Castor raised his hand that was wearing a black glove. Finally, I'll ask you one more time. Writer's Master, do you want to cooperate with me? Hearing this, Noah smiled, but there was no trace of a smile in his eyes. I'm sorry, I don't even have the slightest idea of cooperating with the unscrupulous witch. Castor's face suddenly froze, and his face immediately became distorted. You called me a witch, right? What? Do you hate people calling you a witch? But what you've done has only made people more convinced that you're a witch. Noah said as if he was repeating a fact. Your anger is not worth a single cent. Castor raised his head fiercely, and his body surged with violent magic. Since that's the case, I'll vent all my anger at being worthless in your eyes on you. Go. Assassin. Hearing Castor's angry voice, Assassin smiled and slowly rubbed her feet on the ground. She lifted the long sword in her hand, and her whole body suddenly tensed up as if she was ready to attack. Bang! With the sound of a clear footstep, Assassin's figure turned into a vague shadow, and in a flash, she appeared in front of Noah's group. Clang! A sword suddenly appeared in front of Noah's group, like an arc-shaped half-moon, and cut toward Noah's neck like lightning. The strong wind contained in the sword directly tore the air, and a fallen leaf was neatly divided into two halves in an instant. Clang! However, at this moment, another sword light suddenly appeared in the space like a golden flash. It slashed across and directly collided with the long saber that was slashing at Noah's neck. Clang! Amidst the loud and clear sound of metal clashing, a wave of berserk strength chi shook out from the space where the two sword lights clashed. Immediately, it transformed into a tangible strength chi that surged out in all directions. Bang! As if they were shocked by the shockwave, the two figures with the sword light were knocked back at the same time by the explosion of the chi. Oh! Assassin, who was knocked back to the mountain gate above, raised her eyebrows. Saber? Saber held the invisible sword, and her eyes were like lightning, looking at Assassin above. Let me be your opponent. Be careful, Saber. Noah, who was standing behind Saber, said. Your opponent's ability value may not be comparable to yours, but their agility may be better than yours, and they don't use brute force. I am afraid that their sword skills are better than yours. Saber nodded her head heavily. Chapter 761. Clang! With the heavy sound of steel clashing against steel, the real battle began. The invisible sword that couldn't be seen with the naked eye collided with the katana that was obviously too long. Sparks burst out on the uneven stone stairs. Archer! Noah stepped forward and said to Archer, who was half kneeling on the ground. His body was covered in black charred marks and fresh blood. Let's go. Let's go. Noah said to Archer, who was half kneeling on the ground. Are you okay? No matter how you look at it, I don't look like I can do it, right? Archer's weak but stubborn voice entered Noah's ears. But at least you don't need to worry about me here, whether it's my master or myself. As long as we don't die, there's no problem. Archer. Rin Enbin gritted his teeth, but he also knew that it was better not to be pretentious in this situation. So he could only obediently stay behind Archer. Hearing the movement from behind, Noah, who could imagine what kind of situation was behind him, smiled, raised his head, and looked at Castor in front of the mountain gate. Then, let's end this quickly. After that, Noah rushed out like a cheetah, suddenly turned into a black shadow and rushed toward Castor's direction. Facing Castor, you actually dare to rush toward me, you're really stupid. Castor sneered, raised his black-gloved hand, and pointed in the direction of Noah. Buzz. A magic circle with the shape of an eyeball suddenly rotated around Castor, and an amazing amount of magical power was gathered inside it. In the next moment, a dazzling beam of light shot out from the magic circle, piercing through the space, like a laser beam, violently rushing toward Noah's direction. Looking at the dazzling beam of light, Noah's eyes flashed, but he didn't dodge at all. Castor was full of ridicule. As if he was looking at a fool, he directly collided with the beam of light. Bang! 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 A heavy muffled sound was heard one after another. However, it was not the sound of the beam of light falling on Noah's body, but the sound of the beam of light directly hitting Noah's body, making the beam of light hit a solid wall, and suddenly burst open. What? Castor's face greatly changed. As a magician with Kanzaki's magic, his magic was actually ineffective against an ordinary human, which made Castor suffer a great impact. Whoosh! Noah took advantage of this gap. His figure suddenly rushed forward like lightning, and in a flash, he arrived in front of Castor, whose face changed greatly. Whoosh! With a whistling wind, his fist like a cannonball directly hit Castor's abdomen. Whoosh! However, almost at the same time, another fist that carried the same whistling sound of the wind shot over like a bullet and collided with Noah's fist. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled sound, the two fists collided with each other. One of them was shaken in the direction of the mountain gate, and the other one was shaken back to the stone stairs and fell back to the middle position. After stabilizing his body, Noah, who fell back to the middle position of the stone stairs, slowly raised his head and looked up. He saw that in front of Castor, a man was standing in front of Castor, looking at Noah blankly with his two fists in front of his body, one above the other, and the other below the other, with a ferocious posture, like a python that was about to bite its prey, was standing in front of Castor, looking at Noah blankly. Just now, the person who disintegrated Noah's punch was the man in front of him. Gumu Soichiro, Castor's master. This man had actually managed to block Noah's punch. Even if he didn't use enhanced magic, Noah's punch couldn't be blocked by an ordinary person. But the man in front of him did block Noah's punch. You seem to be surprised. Gumu Soichiro lowered his fist and looked straight at Noah without any emotion. I heard from Castor that you seem to be the same type of master as me. Since you can rely on enhanced magic to fight with a servant, why can't I? When Gumu Soichiro said that, Noah noticed it. On Gumu Soichiro's fist, a magical halo was fluctuating. Although it was not the same as Noah's, it was definitely the effect of the enhanced magic. This man, like Noah, strengthened his body and used his own fighting skills to fight. However, there was no trace of his own magic on Gumu Soichiro's body. The magic around Gumu Soichiro's two fists was completely the aura of Castor's magic. In other words, Gumu Soichiro's magic was Castor's magic. If Noah's fighting skills were his own, then Gumu Soichiro's fighting skills were his own, but Gumu Soichiro's fighting skills were his own, but the magic was Castor's. Although it's just a punch, I can still see from that punch that you seem to be someone who also knows how to hone your own fighting skills. Gumu Soichiro said such a sentence in an almost ruthless tone. This is the first time I have met the same type of person, but I have honed my fighting skills for more than 20 years. How many years have you honed your fighting skills? Are you trying to say that my combat skills are weaker than yours because I've been training for a shorter period of time than you? Noah narrowed his eyes and suddenly smiled. Then let's give it a try. After that, on Noah's fist, the magic lines representing enhanced magic spread like electric wires and quickly wrapped Noah's fist in it. Boom. The soles of his feet slammed on the ground, stirring up a muffled sound. Noah's figure once again turned into a black shadow. With a whistling wind, he rushed straight toward Gumu Soichiro. The oncoming wind made Gumu Soichiro have a little reaction. However, Gumu Soichiro did not choose to dodge. His tall and thin body was like an iron tower standing in the same place. Until the whistling wind approached him, he finally made a move. Raising a pair of fists, he once again assumed the posture of a python with its jaws wide open, ready to pounce on its prey. Suddenly, a rich magical power curled around Gumu Soichiro's fists, as if he was wearing a pair of invisible steel gloves. He slowly clenched his fists. The two fists that were also enhanced, with a harsh sound of wind, almost at the same time bombarded out. Noah's fist was like a bomb that contained a terrifying power. It blasted out directly. Gumu Soichiro's fist, on the other hand, flashed back and forth like a rear-end missile that could freely change its trajectory. It was also like a python that was twisting its soft body. It drew an unpredictable trajectory in space and bit in Noah's direction. And just like Gumu Soichiro could see the level of Noah's fighting skills with just one punch, Noah also clearly felt it in that punch. When that punch blasted out, the unpredictable trajectory had already blocked all his retreat routes, and the surrounding space was all shrouded in the attack range. Even if Noah changed his direction, The punch would definitely be like a venomous snake that would chase after him and bite him. This Gomu Soichiro's fist technique could not be described as unfathomable, but could only be described as strange. Noah, who understood this, curled up the corners of his mouth. His body tensed up, and he spun around. His entire arm was like a whip, swinging forward with a whistling sound. All of a sudden, the fist that was originally like a powerful cannonball turned into a whip carrying an iron ball. It suddenly struck out, and collided with Gomu Soichiro's fist. Boom! Suddenly, a wave of energy rippled out from the center of their fists, causing the surrounding atmosphere to be shaken until it was on the verge of collapse. Chapter 762. Bang! The muffled sound was like a direct hit to a person's heart, abrupt and loud. The force transmitted from the fist caused Gomu Zangakiro to take 2 steps back. On the other hand, Noah's body only trembled a few times, and then he stabilized. This fact also made Gomu Zangakiro's eyes condensed. Although Gomu Zangakiro's fist technique honed for a much longer time than Noah, but the emphasis is on the word strange. It's a fist technique based on strangeness. Of course, a fist technique based on strangeness, once seen through, there's no trace of threat. Just one move. Just one move. Noah saw through Gomu Zangakiro's fist technique, and Gomu Zangakiro couldn't help but become dignified. Gomu Zangakiro didn't know that Noah has a talent called the ability of perception. Even if the time to hone fighting skills is not as long as Gomu Zangakiro, but with the ability of perception, Gomu Zangakiro's fist technique has no secret in front of Noah. In addition to the collision just now, Noah has more or less understood Gomu Zangakiro's strength. In the aspect of strength, although the magician of Kanzai used magical power to strengthen, Gomu Zangakiro's physical ability is still not as good as Noah's, who has been strengthened by the virus of protozoa and used the magic enhancement. In the aspect of skill, Gomu Zangakiro's fist technique is indeed strange, but it's only strange in one aspect. If used in a surprise attack, perhaps even the unaware saber will suffer a big loss, but for Noah, who has the ability of perception, there's no threat. Purely in the aspect of skill, Noah doesn't have much of an advantage. After all, the opponent's fist technique was honed for more than 20 years. Noah excluding the sword technique, in the aspect of barehanded fighting, at most 2 or 3 years. However, even if there's no advantage, Noah's fighting skills are not much worse than Gomu Zangakiro's. As long as Noah was given some time to get used to it, Noah would be able to break that set of fist techniques in minutes. Understanding this point, Noah did not choose to be passive. Instead, he took the initiative to dodge, and once again rushed forward. However, this time, Noah gave up on a head-on clash. Wang. Along with the sound of mana vibrating, streak-like mana patterns also spread across Noah's feet, causing Noah's speed to soar instantly. Zongichiro-sama. Caster stretched out his hand, and a burst of magic surged in his hand. Wang. Suddenly, the soles of Gomu Soichiro's feet were also surrounded by a halo of magic. At that moment, Gomu Soichiro also took advantage of his own soaring foot strength. His figure was like a ghost, constantly flashing around Noah's body. His fists brought a burst of wind, pulling up a fist shadow, like a fierce viper, falling in the direction of Noah like a storm. Noah did not have much of a reaction to Gomu Zangakiro's almost continuous attacks. He was like a leaf that moved back and forth under the attack of a wild wind. He faced the fist wind and dodged if he could. If he could not dodge, he would throw out a punch. His punch accurately landed on Gomu Zangakiro's fist. Occasionally, he would throw out a heavy punch. The increasingly heavy force on it caused Gomu Zangakiro to have no choice but to withdraw. While Noah and Gomu Soichiro were engaged in a battle of skills, on the other side, the two swordsmen were engaged in a white-hot sword battle. Clang 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 clang. That was the constant collision of the golden sword and the silver sword, stirring up a sound of steel clashing. On the golden side was Saber, who was wielding an invisible sword and attacking ferociously, like a stormy sea. On the silver side was Assassin, who held an extremely long weapon in her hand. She moved as if she was dancing. She swung her long sword gracefully, yet she was able to perfectly parry the storm of sword strikes every time. Both of them were absolute heroes of the sword. However, the two people's swords were not the same. If Saber's swordsmanship had the effect of training the body, then Assassin's swordsmanship had the effect of training one's spirit and state of mind. Her swordsmanship did not emphasize on physical strength, but it had strict requirements on technique. Under such circumstances, this battle was like a collision of strength and softness. Every time Saber's invisible sword slashed at Assassin could easily dodge it. Then, the long sword in her hand swung in a perfect arc, bringing with it a sharp force, slashing in Saber's direction. Every time Assassin's dancing long sword slashed in a difficult path towards Saber's intuition skill would sense it, and she would move the invisible sword in her hand, blocking Assassin's seemingly soft sword. In short, neither of them could do anything to the other. Undoubtedly, in terms of ability value, Saber was much higher than Assassin, but she could not do anything to Assassin. In terms of technique, Assassin was much better than Saber, but because Saber's ability value was too high, she could not make an effective attack. One wanted to crush the opponent with strength. The other wanted to defeat the opponent with skill. In the end, neither of them could do anything to the other. Of course, in terms of ability value, Saber had an overwhelming advantage. Even if it was a battle of attrition, the one to fall would definitely be Assassin, whose stamina and magic power were not as good as Saber's. The problem was that Assassin also had an advantage. That was, Assassin had taken advantage of the terrain advantage of high ground. One was at the top of the stairs. The other was at the bottom of the stairs. Assassin, who was standing at the top of the stairs, did not move at all. She only needed to wave the long sword in her hand, and with her superb sword skills and the extraordinary length of the long sword, she could easily block Saber's slashes. Saber, who was standing at the bottom of the stairs, wanted to rush up countless times, but she was constantly attacked by the moonlight-like slashes from above. Under the continuous sparks, she could not even take a step forward. When a sword attacked from a high place, whether it was dodging or defending, it was more exhausting than when it was on flat ground. Moreover, Assassin, who occupied the high ground, only needed to defend that position, and Saber would definitely not be able to rush up. Even if she did, it would be a waste of energy. Both servants had their own advantages. As a result, this tug-of-war situation where they couldn't win after a long time appeared. Under such circumstances, Saber couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Undoubtedly, she had the absolute advantage in terms of ability value, but she could not defeat her opponent. It was no wonder that Saber was anxious. Just like what Noah said, this person's sword skills are better than mine. No, it's way better than mine. Using superior skills and the terrain to make up for the lack of strength. Assassin was the embodiment of this point. Of course, if that was the case, Saber would still have a way to deal with it. What she was afraid of was that this servant with low ability value had hidden some decisive noble phantasm. This was the scariest thing about every servant. Just as Saber was having such thoughts, Assassin's elegant voice was heard from above. You don't have to be so cautious of me. I don't have any decisive noble phantasm. Or rather, I don't even have one. Assassin's sudden words made Saber stand up in shock. This man had actually revealed his trump card? Unlike heroes like you who enjoy fame, I'm just a nobody. I don't have any powerful weapon. The only thing I can rely on is this sword in my hand. Assassin looked down at Saber with a smile on her face. The only thing I can show you is this sword skill that I've spent my entire life training. After saying that, Assassin abruptly turned her body to the side and pulled the long sword in her hand behind her back to block the attack. At that moment, Saber felt it. It was as heavy as the shadow of death. Chapter 763. Saber could only watch as Assassin suddenly turned her body sideways. She pulled the long sword behind her back and held it up. Saber's warning bells rang in her head. Saber, who had a skill called intuition, was able to sense it clearly. At this moment, as Assassin assumed her stance, a demonic aura surged from her body. It was a deadly threat called death. Saber's intuition told her that if she continued to let Assassin do as she pleased without doing anything, she would definitely end up in a miserable state. Saber pointed her invisible sword at Assassin, as if it was a conditioned reflex. Her body was like a ferocious beast as she suddenly charged forward. Unfortunately, Saber's actions were in vain. Although it wasn't a very long time, it was more than enough for Assassin. Secret sword. With a soft murmur, Assassin suddenly opened her eyes. Her gaze was as sharp as a blade as it shot towards Saber's direction. Swallow return. When the name of the famous demonic sword was released from Assassin's mouth, the word death was directly reflected in Saber's eyes. Clang. Along with the sound of the swords, 3 crescent-like blade lights suddenly flashed out from the space, as if they had penetrated the space directly. They were like the scythe of the Grim Reaper, flying from the distant hell towards Saber's direction. Although there were only 3 sword lights, the 3 sword lights instantly enveloped the space around Saber, blocking all of Saber's escape routes. With the deadly shadow of death, they approached her. At this moment, Saber's intuition was like a crazy cicada, constantly chirping. The skill called Swallow Return was absolutely undodgeable. If she tried to dodge it, she would only be reduced to the fate of being cut in half. Before this knowledge was transmitted to Saber's mind, Saber's nerves, driven by her intuition, reacted in advance. Almost instinctively, Saber's body surged with violent magical power. Bang! A gust of wind suddenly erupted from Saber's invisible sword. Wind King Barrier, invisible air. As if it had reached the highest stage of accumulation, it was fiercely compressed together, as if it had reached a critical point. The storm was like a violent impact, surging out from Saber's invisible sword. The strong storm with a sharp whistling sound, with the sword in Saber's hand as the center, fiercely vibrated, and met the 3 sword lights that were approaching like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Dong! A loud sound was heard. It was the sound of the 3 crescent-like sword lights colliding with the storm, as if the 3 crescent moons had collided with the shockwave. A violent wave of wind violently swept in all directions. Crack! The stone steps on the ground cracked open from the impact. Pa! The trees that were closer to the explosion were shattered cleanly. The 3 sword lights ruthlessly cut the storm apart. And then, their momentum became slower and slower. In the end, they were directly covered by the storm, and disappeared from the space. Seeing this, Assassin's face finally changed. She stomped her feet and quickly retreated, creating a distance between them. However, her eyes were fixed on the center of the storm. Phew! There, Saber, who was in the middle of the storm, heaved a heavy sigh, raised her head, and looked into Assassin's eyes. What a terrifying swordsmanship! If I hadn't released my relic, I would have been defeated. Although you don't have a relic, you have a swordsmanship that can reach the level of a relic. You're indeed a famous swordsman. Hearing Saber's generous praise, Assassin still did not speak. This was because Assassin's gaze was completely taken away by the bright object. It was the sword in Saber's hand. She did not know when, but a sword appeared in Saber's hand. It was shining with a bright golden light. The body of the sword was as beautiful as mithril, and the blade was made of gold. The hilt was blue, and the tip was inlaid with a gem. It was a very dazzling knight's sword. Assassin was certain. In this world, there was definitely no other sword that was as dazzling as the one in front of her. Holy sword. Assassin's voice was more or less hoarse. I see. You have such a dazzling holy sword. Saber, your real name. Since it has come to this, there's no point in hiding it anymore. Saber seemed to have predicted this situation. She raised the dazzling holy sword in her hand and pointed it at Assassin. My name is Artoria Pendragon. I am the Queen of Great Britain. King Arthur. As if to praise the name that was enough to shake the heavens and the earth, the entire world suddenly became silent, and there was not a trace of movement. Wind enchantment, invisible air. That was one of Saber's noble artifacts. Its body was wind, and it used compressed wind to wrap around the sword. It changed the refractive index of light and wrapped around Saber's sword, causing the sword to be hidden. It was a noble artifact that could not be seen with the naked eye. There were 3 functions of this noble artifact. 1. It could make it difficult for the enemy to distinguish the size and trajectory of the sword. 2. When necessary, It could release the compressed wind into an extremely explosive force. 3. It was used to hide Saber's true noble artifact. It was because Saber's noble artifact, the golden holy sword, was too famous. It was because he had obtained the holy sword that the world-renowned Night King was able to win 12 major battles in a short span of 10 years, becoming the King of Britain who was known by everyone. The lake sprite was its former owner. Avalon, which had the name of Fairyland, was its scabbard. The king's sword was its other name. It was also known as the lake sword. The lake sprite gave King Arthur the holy sword, Excalibur. In this world, there was no other holy sword more famous than it. That's why you need to hide this sword. Once the sword is exposed, you won't be able to hide your real name anymore. Am I right? Assassin straightened her back as if she was mocking him, but also as if she was smiling bitterly. It seems that being too famous is not a good thing, Night King. Saying such a sentence, Assassin's face once again showed an elegant and leisurely smile. However, there's nothing more delightful than having a showdown with the legendary strongest holy sword. After saying that, Assassin turned her body again, pulled the long sword behind her back, and looked at Saber with a burning gaze. Then, use that holy sword of yours to receive my secret sword and defeat me. Saber silently reached out her other hand, holding the sword with both hands, and fearlessly faced Assassin. As you wish. On the stone stairs, the knight holding the golden holy sword and the swordsman holding the silver sword looked at each other. In the next moment, the two rushed at each other at the same time. A golden sword light and 3 crescent-like sword light collided with each other. Poochie. Accompanied by a tearing sound, a large amount of red blood suddenly splashed into the air. As for the two people standing at the top and bottom of the stone steps, they had already missed each other. Saber, who stood at the top of the stone stairs, still held the holy sword in her hand, and lowered her head in silence. Assassin, who stood at the bottom of the stone stairs, maintained her posture of wielding her sword, and also lowered her head in silence. Taking a closer look, in front of Assassin, there was a huge wound that split diagonally from her shoulder to the ground. Ha! Assassin, who lowered her head, squeezed out a laugh. You win, King Arthur. Leaving this sentence, the figure of Assassin, whose real name was Sasaki Kojiro, gradually became illusory. Finally, she disappeared on the spot. Assassin out. Chapter 764. You win, King Arthur. When this sentence echoed in the air and entered Saber's ears, Saber felt it. Behind her, the scent of Assassin disappeared little by little, until it completely disappeared. Opening her eyes and staring at the holy sword in her hand, Saber whispered softly, as if she was talking to the swordsman who was no longer there. As a servant with low ability and no noble phantasm, you can use your sword technique to release my wind barrier, invisible air, and use the holy sword. You should be proud, Sasaki Kojiro. The main function of Saber's wind barrier, invisible air, was to hide the Excalibur so that her real name and noble phantasm would not be exposed. Therefore, even though the invisible wind barrier had the effect of concealing weapons, and if used well, the effect would be amazing. However, in order to maintain the effect of this noble phantasm, Saber's mana was constantly being depleted, and she was unable to fully utilize it. Once the wind barrier, invisible air, was released, Saber, who did not need to maintain the wind barrier, invisible air, was able to use all of her magical power and all of her power to display her true strength. Therefore, although it was just a simple matter of turning the holy sword from invisible to tangible, it meant that Saber had used all of her strength. If a numerical value must be used to compare, in the case of maintaining the wind barrier, invisible air, Saber's strength was probably around 80% or 90% of her peak. Only by releasing the wind barrier, invisible air, and taking out her holy sword, Saber could concentrate all of her magical power to maintain the wind barrier, invisible air, and display her full strength. A servant with low ability and no noble phantasm could force Saber to this extent. It was indeed something to be proud of. Pong. Just when the winner was decided between Saber and Assassin, from the other side of the stone steps, a heavy muffled sound echoed in the air. Whoosh. Following the heavy muffled sound, A figure flew out like an arrow leaving a bow, carrying a sharp sound as it broke through the air and heavily smashed into the pillar of the mountain gate. Pucci. Then a mouthful of blood spurted out from that person's mouth. His body was like a puppet with a broken string, and slowly fell down. It was only then that Saber reacted. She quickly raised her head and looked in the direction of the mountain gate. Soichiro-sama. Castor let out a sorrowful cry, and looked at the figure below the mountain gate with extreme resentment. He said in a hysterical voice. You. How dare you? The one who had heavily smashed into the pillar of the mountain gate was, shockingly, Gomu Zongakiro. At the foot of the mountain gate, Noah turned his body sideways and looked straight at Gomu Soichiro, who had hit the pillar, and said with a calm face. See? You can't win just because you've trained for a long time, right? To be honest, Kugi Soichiro-sama's fist technique was quite exquisite. It's just that the fist technique was too focused on the word strange. Although the moves were very subtle and strange, if it was used for a surprise attack, as long as the opponent was slightly careless, it was possible to kill the opponent, even if the opponent was stronger than Kugi Soichiro. But because of this, if the opponent saw through the fist technique, or was vigilant in advance, then the fist technique without the effect of strange would be of little use. At least for Noah, who had extraordinary sensing ability and exquisite fighting skills, it was true. Therefore, after seeing through Kugi Soichiro's fist technique, Kugi Soichiro could no longer fight with Noah, and was directly defeated by Noah. After all, in any case, even if he didn't use the power, Noah could compete with the highest level of servant. There were strong and weak servants. Kugi Soichiro, who was strengthened by Castor's magic, could indeed compete with the servant. However, with Kugi Soichiro's strength, there was no way to compete with the highest level of servant, such as Berserker. So, the result was doomed. It was impossible for Kugi Soichiro not to understand this point. Therefore, Castor's support became the most important. Unfortunately, magic has no effect on me. Castor can only be reduced to a spectator. Noah glanced at Castor and said such a sentence with a smile. And do you think I don't know that you have been waiting for me to use the magic cannon? Castor's face changed in an instant. A divine magician who doesn't even care about a large-scale ritual like the Holy Grail War. You must have a countermeasure against my magic cannon, right? Noah sneered. Although the power of that magic has been greatly improved because of my magical power, after all, its predecessor is still the magic bullet. For magic, it's impossible that you don't have a way to deal with it. If it weren't for my magic enhancement, I'm afraid that you would even have a countermeasure against it, right? I have to say your brain is really good. Not only did you prepare the card assassin, but you also pulled Lancer to your side. Even Kugi Soichiro, the master who can compete with the servant, is on your side. Noah sighed. However, you are not the only smart person in this world. You are smart, it's not a problem. The problem is that you don't treat others as fools. If you can think of it, others can also think of it. If you have a hidden card, others will naturally have it too. You didn't see that I have the ability to make magic ineffective. This is your biggest mistake. After that, Noah looked at Castor. Checkmate, Castor. This sentence made Castor completely excited. No. I have prepared so much. I will never lose here. After that, Castor raised one of his hands above his head. Buzz. Suddenly, the entire mountain where Ludong Temple was located began to tremble, and a huge amount of magical power was poured into Castor's body. With the turbulent flow of magical power pouring into Castor's body, Castor's magical power became more and more violent. That magical power was all absorbed from the residents of Fuyuki City, right? I don't believe that even if it's a magic that can burn Ludong Temple, you can't completely nullify it. In that sharp voice, a staff suddenly appeared in Castor's hand. Whoosh! However, just when Castor was about to use the magic that could burn Ludong Temple, an arrow with flame-like magical power flashed through the space, like a meteor, piercing the sky, and shot toward Castor. Pucci. The meteor-like arrow directly penetrated Castor's body, and came out from the back of Castor's heart. Castor's expression, movements, and the huge amount of magical power in his body were all stagnant. Turning his head stiffly, Castor looked at the direction where the arrow came from. There, Archer was kneeling on the ground with blood on his mouth, holding a bow in his hand. His face was pale, and he sneered. "This is a gift for you, witch." Archer, who was almost killed by Lancer because of Castor's calculation, got his revenge at this most critical moment. Archer! In a very unwilling cry, Castor's body gradually dissipated, and finally, he followed Assassin's path. Looking at Castor's figure gradually disappeared, Gumu Soichiro, who was leaning against the pillar of the mountain gate, closed his eyes. Castor exit. Chapter 765. Who? The mountain wind once again blew past the stone stairs in front of the mountain gate. It was as if the tense atmosphere in the air had been swept away as it slowly blew past. After Castor and Assassin left the arena, Kumoi Soichiro leaned against the pillar of the mountain gate and closed his eyes. Noah, Rin Enbin, Saber, and Archer didn't know what to say for a while, so they stayed in the same place and fell into silence. Tonight's battle could be regarded as the real cruel and ferocious side of the Holy Grail War. The probing battle like before no longer existed, and it was replaced by a real battle. Tonight, the two servants took the lead to withdraw, announcing the victory of Noah's team. However, in the face of a victory that was achieved through killing, almost none of the four present could feel a sense of accomplishment and joy of victory. Noah and Rin Enbin looked at each other. Then they looked at the mountain gate above at the same time. To be more precise, it should be said that they looked at Gumu Soichiro, who was leaning on the stone pillar of the mountain gate, as if he was already dead. Then Noah spoke. "I don't have a hobby of killing people." "Don't make it sound like I like to kill people." Rin Enbin, who was about to say something, was silenced by Noah's words. After glaring at Noah, he sighed and looked at Gumu Soichiro and said, "Don't worry, I'm not going to do anything." "You have already lost, Gumu-sensei. If you don't want to be killed by other masters, you should quickly escape to the church and seek refuge." In such a case, generally, it was impossible to leave a master alive. After all, even if the servant has withdrawn, as long as the master is not dead and still has the command seal, then they will not lose the qualification to continue to participate in the Holy Grail War. If they are lucky, or have the ability, the master who still has the command seal can sign a contract with another servant and continue to participate in the Holy Grail War. In order to prevent such a thing from happening, during the Holy Grail War, the master will be obliterated. Gumu Soichiro seemed to be clear about this point. He opened his eyes, as indifferent as before, as if he didn't care about his life at all, and said expressionlessly, "Are you not going to kill me?" "I'm sorry, I don't have a hobby of killing people." Rin Enbin turned his head away. "So before I change my mind, you should quickly escape to the church." As soon as this sentence fell, a sneer echoed in the forest. Unfortunately, there is no way for this person to survive even if he escapes to the church, so the loser should obey the rules and directly leave here. Such a voice came from afar, drilling into the ears of everyone present. Everyone present was shocked. They all turned their heads and looked at the source of the voice. Of course Noah. Because Noah didn't feel that someone was coming. Of course, it wasn't because the other party hid from Noah's sensing ability. It was because the other party wasn't even within Noah's sensing range. He just let his voice pass. Then Noah and the rest saw it. In the direction of the voice, a luxurious-looking spear suddenly shot out, like a bullet, directly landing on Gumu Soichiro's body. Puchi! The sound of a body being pierced through resounded in the sky above Ludong Temple. Gumu Soichiro, whose chest was pierced, spat out a muffled groan, his eyes wide open, but his expression remained the same. There was no change at all. Immediately, Gumu Soichiro maintained this appearance, and gradually lost his vitality. Gumu Soichiro dead. The sudden change shocked Noah and the rest. "Who?" Saber yelled, stomped on the ground, and rushed out like a gust of wind, chasing the source of the voice and the spear. Rin and Osaka wanted to chase after her, but Noah pulled her back. Ever since they came to Ludong Temple, Rin and Osaka had been pulled by Noah. Moreover, every time she was pulled, it meant that something bad was about to happen. This made Rin and Osaka a little anxious. What's wrong now? Hearing this, Noah didn't say anything, he only smiled bitterly, turned his head, and looked at Archer, who was still half kneeling on the ground. Meeting Noah's gaze, Archer, who was clutching his chest, smiled bitterly. I really can't hide from you. Archer's words made Rin and Osaka have a bad feeling. What's wrong? Hearing Rin and Osaka's words, Noah and Archer didn't answer. Under such circumstances, Archer suddenly said this sentence. Do you know where I came from? Noah and Rin and Osaka were both stunned. However, there was a reason why Archer said this. Oh right, you still don't know, right? Archer looked at Noah and said helplessly. Actually, Rin didn't know my identity, including my real name. This time, Noah was really surprised. He looked at Rin and Osaka. It was fine if others didn't know. As Archer's master, how could Rin and Osaka not know Archer's real name? Could it be that Rin and Osaka was so bad that she forgot to ask for the servant's real name? It's not my fault, Rin and Osaka quickly said. During the summoning process, Archer's memory seemed to be in a mess. He couldn't even remember who he was. That's why I didn't know. Well, I guess that's what happened. Archer smiled helplessly. Now let me tell you where I came from. Rin and Osaka was shocked. You've recovered your memory? Don't expect too much. I'm not a famous hero, and I'm not a character that appears in legends. Perhaps in this world, no one knows my name. Archer closed his eyes. If you want to know why, it's because I'm a heroic spirit from the future. Noah and Rin and Osaka frowned at the same time. A heroic spirit from the future. This was not something to be surprised about. Heroic spirits were spirits that had left the world and existed outside of it. They were not bound by the time and space of the world itself. Therefore, the heroic spirit throne that existed outside of the world had gathered heroes from the past, present, and even the future. Therefore, it was not strange that Archer was a heroic spirit from the future. Yes, there's nothing strange about a heroic spirit from the future. You're just wondering why I'm telling you this, right? Archer seemed to have seen through Noah and Rin Enbin's thoughts as he spoke calmly. Now that things have come to this, there's nothing to hide. Regardless of what happened to me after I became a heroic spirit, before I became a heroic spirit, I was already living in this era. Noah and Rin and Osaka looked at each other in dismay when they heard this. Noah's frown deepened as he asked with uncertainty. In other words, before you became a heroic spirit, you were still a human. Now you're in this world? That's strange, isn't it? Archer said self-deprecatingly. But you're only half right. Half? Noah was confused. What do you mean? Before I became a heroic spirit, I was still a human living in this era, Archer said in a deep voice. But I'm not in this world. After hearing Archer's words, Noah's heart skipped a beat. Even Rin and Osaka seemed to have thought of something and blurted it out. Parallel world? Correct. Archer's expression was complicated. Otherwise, there's no way to explain why I don't exist in this world. Noah and Rin and Osaka understood Archer's words. In other words, Archer was from this era when he was alive. However, in this world, in this era, Archer did not exist when he was alive. In that case, the only explanation left was the parallel world. Chapter 766. The so-called parallel worlds actually referred to worlds that were similar, but had some differences in certain aspects. Just like two sides of a mirror, parallel worlds were like mirrors that looked at each other. They were on different parallel lines and would only look at each other, but would not interact with each other. The difference was that if you looked at a normal mirror, the inside and outside of the mirror would be the same. Parallel worlds, however, would have differences in certain aspects. For example, Archer was one such example. Undoubtedly, he existed in this era when he was alive, but there was no Archer in this era when he was alive. This meant that Archer did not exist in this era when he was alive. Instead, he existed in this era of another parallel world. After a long period of time, he achieved greatness and became a heroic spirit. It's basically confirmed that I don't exist in this world. At least, I didn't find myself in this world. Archer's voice was complicated, but also relieved. Perhaps this is a good thing. A good thing? Rin and Osaka asked. Why? Why would there be a reason? Archer said sarcastically. No matter who it is, they would be dissatisfied with their past. Unfortunately, no matter which world it is, there is no such thing as a regret medicine. As for me, my dissatisfaction is so great that I feel like it's a good thing that I don't exist anymore. Noah went silent. Let's not talk about whether Archer was right or wrong. Noah felt that no matter which world it was, there were plenty of people with unbearable pasts. The Archer servant in front of him was obviously one of them. Rin and Osaka stared at Archer, as if she was trying to see through his heart. She bit her lips. Why are you suddenly saying this? Why? Archer's expression revealed a hint of helplessness. I just feel like if I don't say it now, I won't have the chance to say it in the future. The bad premonition in Rin Enbin's heart suddenly grew stronger, causing her to bite her lips harder and harder. Archer sighed and finally let go of his hand that was covering his chest. When Archer removed his hand from his chest and let Noah and Rin Enbin see his chest, Noah and Rin Enbin reacted differently. Noah seemed to have expected this and closed his eyes. Rin and Osaka's eyes widened as he fell silent. On Archer's chest, where his heart was, there was a hole. A large amount of blood seeped out and dyed Archer's clothes red. As you can see, Archer forced a smile. When I was ambushed by Lancer, my heart was taken away by that deadly magic gun right from the start. It's already not bad that I'm able to hold on until now. The ominous premonition came true. Rin Enbin gritted his teeth, his expression filled with unwillingness. He had no choice but to accept this. Archer's heart had been pierced through. If he wasn't a spirit and had been holding on, he would have died a long time ago. Archer's departure meant that Rin Enbin had lost her master status. Of course, Rin Enbin still had the command curse. If she could find another servant to contract with, she could continue to participate in the Holy Grail War as a master. However, losing the servant that he had summoned was already a loss for Rin Osaka. For a girl like her who saw victory as her mission, it was hard to accept this fact. Rin Enbin didn't feel as sad about Archer's disappearance. After all, the disappearance of the servant didn't mean that they were gone. Originally, the servants in the Holy Grail War were just the avatars of the heroic spirits in the outer world. Archer's disappearance meant that he had returned to the seat of heroic spirits. He didn't really die. I'm sorry, Archer, Rin Enbin smiled weakly. If I didn't ask you to provide long-range support and asked you to come with us, you wouldn't have been attacked by Lancer, and you wouldn't have had to leave now. I'm always like this. I always make mistakes at the most crucial moments. If you want to resent me, resent me. You think too much, Rin. I don't have any reason to resent you. Archer shook his head. I don't want to fulfill my wish, so I don't care much about the Holy Grail. I only fought because you wanted to. I don't resent anyone. However, I hope that you will remember what I'm about to say. Archer's expression suddenly became serious. You need to be careful. The Holy Grail might not be a good thing. Archer's sudden words shocked Noah and Rin Enbin. What did he mean by that? As I said before, I was also a person of this era. Archer said word by word under Noah and Rin Enbin's surprised expression. Actually, in my life, I participated in the Holy Grail War as a master, and I almost won the Holy Grail. Noah and Rin Enbin looked at each other. Once obtained the Holy Grail? Noah asked in return. In other words, in the end, you didn't get the Holy Grail? It's not that I didn't get it, but I gave up. Archer didn't keep them in suspense anymore. Do you know the principle behind this ritual called the Holy Grail War? Noah and Rin Enbin nodded at the same time. As everyone knew, there was a spiritual vein under Fuyuki City. The so-called spiritual vein, in fact, could also be called the Earth Vein. It was connected to the source of infinite magic, and there was an extremely large amount of magic flowing through the terrain. This was the case in Mayo City. This was also the case in Fuyuki City. The Holy Grail War that existed in Fuyuki City was based on this foundation. The three magicians Enbin, Jiantong, and Einsteinberg built a large-scale magic array on the land of Fuyuki City. This large-scale magic array had the ability to draw magic from Fuyuki City's Earth Vein and store it. With the magic power stored in this large-scale magic circle as the source, about every 60 years, the magic power in the veins of Fuyuki City would accumulate enough to support the launch of the Holy Grail War, which would be the beginning of the Holy Grail War. Most of the magic needed to summon the servant was provided by this magic array. Therefore, this large-scale magic array was also called the Great Holy Grail. Selecting a candidate for the master, bestowing the stigmata upon the master, and making contact with the seat of heroic spirits outside the world, allowing the master to effortlessly summon heroic spirits, which should have been incomparably difficult. These were all the functions of the Great Holy Grail. In addition to the Great Holy Grail, there was also a small Holy Grail. That was the real Holy Grail. This small Holy Grail was said to be made by the Einsteinberg family. Because of the knowledge instilled by Gaia and Aleia, Noah remembered that the little Holy Grail was a vessel responsible for collecting the souls of the 6 servants who died in the Holy Grail War. When they returned to the outside of the world, they used their power to pierce a hole in the world. Then they used the huge amount of magic accumulated in the Great Holy Grail to fix the hole, thereby creating a door to the outside of the world. It was a vessel to reach the root. This was the true face of the Holy Grail War. Under this purpose, the function of fulfilling any wish was just incidental. Therefore, before the souls of the 6 servants were stored in the small Holy Grail, this Holy Grail made by Einsteinberg did not have the power to fulfill wishes and open the path to the root. As if falling into a bad memory, Archer's face became ugly. Although I don't know if the same thing happened in this world, I still have to say that the Holy Grail is likely to have been contaminated. Chapter 767. Contamination. For a moment, Noah and Rin and Osaka almost didn't react to Archer's words. Especially Rin and Osaka, who was completely stunned. Noah still had some knowledge about the Holy Grail War from Gaia and Aleia, so he knew the true nature and purpose of the Holy Grail War. Rin and Osaka, on the other hand, didn't know anything about the Holy Grail War. Every 60 years, the Great Holy Grail in Fuyuki City would accumulate enough magic power to start the ritual. Until now, the Holy Grail War had been held for more than 5 times. That was to say, this Holy Grail War was the 5th Holy Grail War. Before this, the previous 4 Holy Grail Wars had all failed due to all kinds of problems. In the end, no one obtained the Holy Grail. Among them, the 4th Holy Grail War happened 10 years ago. Originally, after the Holy Grail War ceremony, if one wanted to perform another ceremony, they would have to wait for about 60 years to accumulate mana. However, because the 4th Holy Grail War did not reach the point where the magic accumulated in the Great Holy Grail could be completely used up, it only took 10 years for the Holy Grail War to accumulate enough magic power to start the Holy Grail War ahead of time. Just 10 years ago, the previous head of the Inosaka family, Rin Inosaka's father, participated in the Holy Grail War. In the end, he died in a hurry, so Rin Inosaka didn't have a proper understanding of the Holy Grail War. Rin Inosaka only knew the basics of the Holy Grail War from the church's overseer. Rin Osaka thought that the principle behind the Holy Grail War that Archer mentioned was that the 7 masters and the 7 servants had to decide a winner before the Holy Grail would descend. Rin and Osaka didn't know that the so-called Holy Grail was already prepared by the barons. The only thing that was lacking was the power and ability to activate the Holy Grail, which was the souls of the 6 servants. Only after the souls of the 6 servants were filled, the Holy Grail would be truly formed. Rin and Osaka didn't know any of this. Seeing Rin and Osaka's confused look, Archer wanted to explain, but his body was suddenly filled with mist, making his body gradually become illusory. Archer! Rin and Osaka exclaimed. It seems that we don't have much time for a clear explanation. Archer clenched his teeth as he clutched his pierced heart and looked at Noah. Let's not talk about Ling for now. You seem to have some understanding of the true workings of the Holy Grail War, so I'll just say it directly. Just like the word said, the Holy Grail may have been contaminated. At least, that was the case in the Holy Grail War that I participated in when I was alive. Why? Noah did not waste any time and asked directly. Why was the Holy Grail contaminated? That happened during the 3rd Holy Grail War. Archer tried his best to explain what he knew in the most concise way. In the Holy Grail War, the House of Baron, who was not good at combat magic, used a foreign classic as a catalyst to summon an eighth servant, Avenger, which was different from the 7 classes of the Holy Grail War. The 8th rank servant? Noah frowned deeply. Avenger? Avenger? Rin and Osaka subconsciously clenched his hands because of this ominous rank. There is no doubt that it is an ominous rank. Archer smiled helplessly. That servant is not a hero, but the absolute evil of this world, the sum of all the evil in the world, the most ancient evil, and so on. Instead of saying that it is a heroic spirit, it is better to say that it is a body of consciousness formed by the concept itself. If Gaia is the consciousness of the planet, and Alea is the consciousness of mankind, then it is the consciousness of all the evil in this world. The same as the suppression? Rin and Osaka was completely stunned. Even Noah's face sank. He was secretly shocked. There was such a thing in the Holy Grail War? Why didn't Gaia and Alea mention it at all? Don't be so surprised. They just exist in the same form. The combination of all the evil in the world is a kind of curse. Although ordinary curses are not on the same level as it, they can't really be compared to the 2 great restraints. Archer laughed. If that world's evil can really be on par with the restraining power, let alone a Holy Grail, whose authenticity is unknown, even if all the Holy Grail, including the real one, were added together, it would still be impossible to summon the existence of the restraining power. Hearing this, Noah and Rin and Osaka both sighed in relief. If there really was an existence on the same level as the suppression force, then let alone Rin and Naka, even Noah wouldn't dare to say that he could deal with it at full power. Curse pollution. Noah, who had calmed down, suddenly thought of something. Could it be? Did you notice it? Archer looked at Noah and bitterly smiled. That's right. Although he was known as the evil of this world, he was not a hero, nor did he leave behind any great achievements in any myths or legends. Naturally, he did not have the strength that a heroic spirit should have. He was very weak and was killed not long after he was summoned. There was no need for Archer to explain the subsequent development. Noah could guess it. The soul of the defeated Avenger was absorbed by the Holy Grail. Because even the soul itself was absolutely evil, the Holy Grail was contaminated, and became an existence that manifested the evil power. Understanding this, Noah took a deep breath. What will the polluted Holy Grail become? Archer looked at Noah and said word by word. You're the one who's going to die. It will become a vessel full of curses. Once it is summoned, a curse that no human can withstand will flow out and curse every human until the curse covers the entire world. Although Rin and Osaka didn't understand the theory behind it, she still understood what Archer was trying to say. She took a deep breath. Even Noah could not help but be speechless. He did not expect that participating in a ritual that Gaia and Alea called entertainment would involve the life and death of all humans. Although I don't know if this world is the same, the Holy Grail War that I participated in was such an existence. Therefore, I gave up on the Holy Grail. Saying this, Archer's voice started to fade away. At this time, Noah and Rin and Osaka realized. Archer's body had almost disappeared. Archer. Rin and Osaka opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she chose to stop and closed her eyes. After a while, she opened her eyes with a gorgeous smile on her face. It doesn't matter if the Holy Grail is contaminated or not. What I have done will not change. I participated in this ceremony for the sake of victory. So, Archer, even if you leave here, I will not obediently admit defeat. I will take your share and obtain victory. Is that so? Archer suddenly smiled. His smile was very gentle. Then you are really reliable. Leaving behind these words, Archer's increasingly illusory body finally began to slowly dissipate. In the end, he completely disappeared from the spot. Archer, leave. Rin and Osaka stared at the spot where her servant disappeared. She did not speak for a long time. Noah turned around and looked at Ludong Temple behind the mountain gate above the stone stairs. He then raised his head and looked at the sky. Rin and Osaka might not have heard it, but Noah did hear it. When Archer returned to the Seat of Heroes, A sentence entered Noah's ears. If you want to find Lancer, then go to the church. This was the last sentence that Archer left behind. At that moment, Noah's eyes flashed with a thoughtful light. The church, huh? Chapter 768. Bang! As soon as he returned home, Rin Enosaka seemed to have completely lost his strength. He fell on the sofa, and even his head was buried in the sofa. It was as if he could no longer move. Only a weak breathing sound could be heard. Noah, who came back with Rin Enosaka, glanced at Rin Enosaka but didn't say anything. Although he wasn't as good as Rin Enosaka, after tonight's battle, Noah also needed to think more about the future situation. After all, in just one night, 2 masters and 3 servants had already withdrawn from the Holy Grail War. Although Rin Enosaka didn't announce his withdrawal, he couldn't fight anymore after losing his servant. Unless he signed a contract with another servant, he could only be a spectator until the end of the Holy Grail War. Furthermore, because he still had the command seal, in order to prevent Rin Enosaka from returning, there might be other masters who would come to assassinate Rin Enosaka and kill the heir of the Enosaka family. That might happen. Therefore, compared to Noah, Rin Enosaka must have more worries. As for Noah, he needed to carefully consider the 2 pieces of information left by Archer before he left. One was that the Holy Grail was likely to be contaminated. The other was the whereabouts of Lancer, who killed Archer. Excluding Rin Enosaka, there were a total of 4 groups of masters and servants. The masters that left were Gumu Soichiro and Caster. The servants that left were Archer, Caster, and Assassin. The remaining servants, in addition to Saber and Rider, were Lancer and Berserker. Berserker's master was determined to be Ilya, and Saber's master was Tamahira. Therefore, in the entire Holy Grail War, only Lancer's master hadn't appeared yet. In addition, there was also the person who killed Gumu Soichiro. Just who was that guy? This was also a problem. What are you going to do? Noah said as if nothing had happened. You're no longer a master. There's no need for you to participate in the war. For your own safety, it's better to seek refuge in the church. Don't even think about it. Rin Enosaka finally reacted. He lifted his head from the sofa and met Noah's gaze with a strong will. I've said it before. Even if Archer leaves, I won't admit defeat. Is that so? Noah smirked. In other words, you're going to find another servant who's alone to contract? Me too. Rin Enosaka finally had a bitter expression on his face. However, among the remaining servants, the Berserker is someone that cannot be negotiated with. It is impossible for him to choose to betray Iliasphère and sign a contract with me. Lancer is also the main culprit behind the destruction of Archer. Furthermore, his master has yet to appear, so I don't know if Lancer and his master are compatible. There is too little information, so he is basically not a contract target. Originally, signing a contract with Saber would be ideal. I lack a servant, and her master is unconscious and unable to fight. If we want to win, then the best choice is to sign a contract with her. Rin Enosaka sighed. However, I don't think that a knight like Saber would abandon her master and sign a contract with someone else. It's no different from betrayal, so Saber would definitely not do it. Rin Enosaka glanced at Noah. Or do you want me to target your rider? I have no objections. Noah shrugged. As long as you can do it. After hearing Noah's words, Rin Enosaka stared at him and did not say anything else. Being stared at by Rin Enosaka like this, Noah raised an eyebrow. You should be a smart person, so don't ask me why I didn't kill you to prevent another master from coming back. If you do, I'll probably have to reevaluate you. In the face of Gumu Soichiro, who had lost his ability to resist, Noah said that he didn't have any hobby of killing people. If Rin Enosaka asked this question again, then Noah would have to reevaluate Rin Enosaka's intelligence. Then I'll change the question. Rin Enosaka said calmly without any emotion. Is our partnership still going to continue? It was no wonder that Rin Enosaka would ask such a question. After all, cooperation was based on the fact that both sides had their own value. Now that Rin Enosaka had lost his servant, he had no way to compete with other masters. Under such circumstances, Rin and Osaka naturally lost the value of continuing to cooperate with him. In response, Noah asked back. Our partnership was originally to deal with Berserker. You were responsible for stalling for time, and I was responsible for using the time you bought to kill Berserker. Now that you don't have a servant, if you go up against Berserker, will you run away because of this? How is that possible? Rin and Osaka answered without hesitation. Didn't I say that even without Archer, I won't admit defeat? Then isn't it fine? Noah said in an indifferent tone. The division of labor between us hasn't changed. If we need to deal with Berserker, you'll still be in charge. As long as you can buy time, everything else has nothing to do with me. Rin and Osaka went silent. After a long time, Sui-kun raised her head, and a beautiful smile slowly appeared on the face of the popular idol of Sui-kun Academy. You're really gentle. Noah frowned and protested. Why did you come to such a conclusion? Rin and Osaka ignored Noah's words. With a mischievous smile, he buried his head back into the sofa. He no longer looked as powerless as he did before. At this time, a shadow flew in from the window and landed on the floor of Rin and Osaka's living room with a loud clang. Rin and Osaka quickly raised his head again. When he saw who it was, his spirit was lifted. Saber. It was Saber, who went to chase after the mysterious person who killed Gomu Soichiro. How was it? Noah stepped forward and looked at Saber. Did you catch up? Saber glanced at Noah and Rin Enbin. After a while, she shook her head. Not only did I not catch up, I didn't even see what the person looked like. I'm very sorry. Even Saber didn't catch up? Rin and Osaka was shocked. Does that mean that person is a servant? I'm not sure. Saber met Noah and Rin and Osaka's gaze. But I can feel a very strange magic. It doesn't seem like a human's magic. Doesn't seem like a human's magic. Rin and Osaka rubbed his chin. Since it's Saber's feeling, it shouldn't be wrong. The person used a gun to kill Gemu-sensei. Could it be a Lancer? No. Noah denied Rin and Osaka's guess. Lancer's gun is a red magic gun. That gun is obviously too luxurious. It's definitely not Lancer's gun. Rin and Osaka and Saber looked at each other. If it wasn't Lancer, then who could it be? Berserker. Impossible. That guy had gone berserk. He didn't know how to speak or retreat. He only knew how to charge and didn't use a gun. It couldn't be him. If it wasn't Lancer, then who could it be? When Rin and Osaka and Saber fell into silence, Noah came to the window and looked at the night sky. He recalled Archer's last words. Thus Noah suddenly spoke. In Osaka, what kind of place is the church in Fuyuki? Chapter 769. The Church. Noah's words startled Rin Enbin, and he couldn't help but ask curiously. Why are you asking about this? I'm a little concerned. Noah waved his hand perfunctorily. Also, as a master, I have never been to the church and have only seen the supervisor of this year's Holy Grail War. I don't know much about the church, but you seem to know a lot about it. So tell me more. Undoubtedly, you didn't go the last time I asked you to, and now you're bringing this up again. How suspicious. Rin Enbin stared at Noah for a while before continuing. If you want to ask about the supervisor of this year's Holy Grail War, although it wasn't my intention, I do know a lot about him. After all, he's my guardian. Guardian? Noah was surprised. The supervisor of the church is your guardian? I know it's strange, but the relationship between them is also very complicated. Rin Enbin said in a somewhat emotionless tone. That fake priest is indeed the supervisor of the Holy Grail War. But he's also related to the association that we magicians belong to. Rin Enbin paused for a while as if he was organizing his memories. After a while he explained to Noah. The current supervisor of the church used to be a member of the Holy Church. Later, he was sent to the Magic Association, and became my father's disciple. My father was in charge of teaching him magic knowledge and abilities. After my father passed away, he replaced my father and became my guardian because I couldn't be independent at that time. There's such a relationship. Noah scratched his cheek. In other words, other than the supervisor of the Holy Church. He's also a member of the Magic Association. And he's also your senior's guardian? That's why I said he's a fake priest. Rin Enbin obviously didn't have a good impression of his senior. Even his tone became a little harsh. Undoubtedly, the relationship between the Holy Church and the Magic Association is so bad, but that person was able to gain a foothold in both organizations and even became my father's disciple. However, thanks to this, after my father passed away, my magic was basically taught by him. In this aspect, I'll admit his value. Is that so? Noah nodded thoughtfully. What's the priest's name? Yenfeng Chili. Rin and Osaka said the name directly. Then he seemed to have thought of something and clapped his hands. That's right, that fake priest also participated in the last Holy Grail War as master. This sentence made Noah's heart skip a beat. The church's supervisor, that priest Yenfeng Chili, also participated in the Holy Grail War? That means he was already a master? At this moment, Noah finally remembered. On the second night after summoning Ryder, he seemed to have met Lancer outside the church, right? The more he thought about it, the more Noah felt that something was wrong. The more he thought about it, the more Noah was worried. In addition to the information left behind by Archer before he disappeared, Noah couldn't sit still anymore, and immediately walked towards the door. Noah. Rin Enbin froze for a moment. Where are you going? Saber, who had been quietly listening to the conversation like a loyal guard, also asked in surprise. There are some things I care about. Noah didn't even turn his head, and directly walked out of the hall. I'm going to the church. You guys can rest first, don't wait for me. After saying this, Noah's figure disappeared from Rin Enbin and Saber's sight. Aren't you going to follow him? Saber asked Rin Enbin. Maybe Noah found something? Even so, I don't have a servant anymore. Even if I follow him, I'll just be a burden. Rin Enbin stared blankly at the door, and then turned to look at Saber. To prevent this from happening again, Saber, I need your help. Saber understood the meaning behind Rin Enbin's words. You want me to form a contract with you and become your servant? Saber looked directly at Rin Enbin. Rin, you should know that my master is still unconscious. Do you want me to give up on her and form a contract with you while she's unconscious? Although Saber didn't directly reject him, Rin Enbin already understood what Saber meant. It was obvious that Saber wouldn't form a contract with Rin Enbin under such circumstances. That would be no different from betrayal. I knew you would say that. Rin Enbin wasn't upset at all. Instead, he smiled. But Saber, we don't know when Sakura will wake up. If she continues to sleep like this, what are you going to do? If my master can't fight, then I, as the sword, will do, Saber replied without hesitation. Plus, I should be the one fighting. Sakura is someone I have to protect. It's fine even if I don't fight. But if you don't have a master, you'll be troubled too, right? Rin Enbin said. Do you want to fight alone until the end and obtain the Holy Grail yourself? Saber frowned when she heard this. Why did it sound like Saber was going to monopolize the Holy Grail? I know you're strong, but it's not good to fight alone. Rin Enbin finally made this suggestion. Coincidentally, I don't have a servant, and your master can't move. So, why don't we form a team? A team? Saber seemed to understand Rin Enbin's intention. I don't have any desire for the Holy Grail. I just want to obtain the final victory, Rin Enbin said firmly. So even if we don't have a contract, we can just form a team. I'll be your master, and you'll be my servant. Before Sakura wakes up, how about we maintain this relationship? Relationship, not contract, right? Saber finally understood. In other words, we're master and servant in name, right? That's right. Rin and Osaka smiled. How about it? Is this acceptable? Saber closed her eyes and fell into deep thought. Rin Enbin didn't rush her. He just sat there and waited for Saber's answer. After a long time, Saber finally opened her eyes and nodded. I understand, Rin. Before Sakura wakes up, we'll form a team and fight together. Hearing this, Rin and Osaka smiled in satisfaction. Nighttime, after leaving Enbin's house, Noah went straight to the church. Enbin's house was quite far from the church. In addition, It was the middle of the night. Noah walked in the dark towards the church. He didn't seem to be in a hurry. It was as if he was out for a walk. It looked like he was taking a leisurely walk, but in reality, it was quite fast. As the night deepened, Noah climbed up a steep slope and finally arrived at the entrance of the church from a few days ago. Looking at the dark night, the church seemed to have opened its bloody mouth and was ready to swallow any intruders alive. This time, Noah didn't just stand at the entrance. Instead, he pushed open the iron fence and walked in. Outside the church's chapel was a courtyard that looked a little shabby. Noah crossed the courtyard and came to the chapel. He reached out his hand and pushed the door open. Kacha! With a slight but clear sound of the door opening, the full view of the church appeared in front of Noah's eyes. It was just an ordinary church. Long benches were lined up in an orderly manner. Silver moonlight shone through the windows. Wisps of fog-like smoke rose from the candles placed on the table at the front of the hall. Wisps of cold air lingered in the air. In this church, the back of a tall man wearing a priest's outfit appeared in Noah's vision. Looking at the priest, Noah slowly narrowed his eyes. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.